To all rational thinkers, I am your strategic observer, Maggie Liu. Today we are going to break down a narrative system that is, at its core, an exceptionally cold-blooded, reverse acquisition. Let us begin. On the journey to my political marriage, Crown Prince Zhao Heng threw me out of the only carriage for the sake of the woman he loved. Nianian Wanru is frail. You are a general's daughter. Walking a little will do you no harm. I watched the dust rising ahead and the enemy cavalry closing in behind us. I laughed. Then I reached into the storage space bound to me, pulled out a bottle of ice-cold cola, and took a long drink. Turning around, I walked toward the enemy regent who was rumored to kill without blinking. Want to make a marriage deal? My dowry is a warehouse filled with supplies worth billions, plus an unrivaled beauty who can wield both the brush and the sword. When Zhao Heng ordered me out of the bridal carriage, the wind in Black Sand Valley was at its fiercest. Yellow sand lashed the carriage walls in a dense, urgent patter. Ahead lay Eagle's Beak Gorge on the border between the two kingdoms. Behind us stretched a wasteland where no human habitation had been seen for half a day's journey. The bridal escort formed a single file through the narrow valley path. Vermilion banners whipped wildly in the wind, and even the horses pawed the ground in agitation. Lin Wanru lay inside my bridal carriage, her face pale and a damp cloth draped over her forehead. With one hand, she clutched Zhao Heng's sleeve and whispered weakly that she could not breathe. With the other, she secretly protected the white jade hairpin by her temple, which had not shifted so much as half an inch. Zhao Heng looked at her, then turned to me. Nianian Wanru's old illness has returned. She cannot endure the wind. You grew up learning martial arts from General Jiang. Riding for part of the way will do you no harm. Once we pass Eagle's Beak Gorge, I will have her return the bridal carriage to you. His voice was gentle, but his tone left no room for discussion. I did not ask, as I once would have, why my bridal carriage alone could save Lin Wanru when the escort had more than 20 carriages. Nor did I remind him that I was Princess Anning, sent by imperial decree to northern Liang, and that the alliance treaty and imperial golden seal were aboard my carriage. Leaving it meant surrendering my life and dignity into someone else's hands. I merely looked up at the sky. A sandstorm was coming, yet not a single bird flew near the mouth of the valley. Very well. I untied my cloak and handed it to my maid, Qingdai. I will get out. Zhao Heng seemed not to have expected me to agree so readily. Instead, his brow furrowed. Lin Wanru propped herself up and looked at me with a face full of remorse. Sister Jiang, I have burdened you. If my body were not truly so weak, I would rather die than dare occupy your bridal carriage. Since you are reluctant to die, then live properly. I looked at her. Stop talking about death all the time. It brings ill luck. Her eyes immediately reddened. Zhao Heng's face darkened. Jiang Nian, why must you wound her with your words when she is this ill? Since your highness can hear only her tears, why bother asking me anything? I stepped down from the carriage stool without looking at him again. Zhao Heng's expression turned ugly, but in the end he said nothing. He merely ordered someone to bring me an old grey-white horse and left 2 Eastern Palace guards behind. I will take the convoy out of the valley first. Travel slowly. They will protect you. With that, he mounted his horse. The wheels rolled over sand and stone as the procession continued north. Qingdai wanted to stay, but Lin Wanru's maid forcibly took her away on the pretext that someone had to watch over the dowry. In less time than it took a stick of incense to burn, the miles-long convoy vanished into the yellow sand, and even its vermilion banners disappeared from sight. Only I, the old horse, and the 2 guards remained between heaven and earth. One of them glanced back to make sure the convoy was gone. His hand slowly settled on the hilt of his saber. I stroked the side of the old horse's neck. Its right foreleg bore an old injury, and beneath the saddle someone had hidden a short 3-edged spike. After 2 li of riding, the spike would grind through its flesh. The horse would panic and throw me. Even if the fall did not kill me, the men behind me would finish the job with a blade. This was no spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a death trap prepared long ago. For 6 years I had believed Zhao Heng merely biased, cowardly, and conceited. Only 3 days ago, when I found half a burned letter beneath his desk bearing the words Northern Liang grain route and black sand handover. Did I realize how badly I had misjudged him? The Emperor of Great Sheng feared the Jiang family's military power. He dissolved my betrothal to the Crown Prince, invested me as Princess Anning, and sent me to Northern Liang as the future empress of its 12-year-old emperor. Zhao Heng had volunteered to escort me not out of regard for our former affection, but to use the marriage handover as cover to assassinate Northern Liang's regent, Xiaoyan, at the border, and I was the perfect scapegoat. If Xiaoyan died, Great Sheng could blame internal strife in Northern Liang. If the plot was exposed, Zhao Heng could claim that the princess sent for marriage had colluded with assassins. Whether I lived long enough to enter Northern Liang had never been part of his plan. "Princess, please mount," the guard on the left urged. I slipped a hand into my wide sleeve. With a thought, a high-powered flashlight the length of my palm dropped into it. In my former life, I had managed a modern emergency supplies warehousing project. After a warehouse fire, I opened my eyes as 16-year-old Zhang Nian. The disaster relief warehouse had come with me. It held medicine, food, tents, lighting equipment, and tools, but no divine weapons. Every item I used was gone forever. Nothing would ever replenish. For 6 years I had barely touched it. I understood better than anyone that once others learned of a limited trump card, it would become a death warrant. But now someone had already come to take my life. There is no hurry. I looked at the guard. "Where did the Crown Prince order you to make your move?" Both men's expressions changed at once. The man on the right drew first, slashing diagonally from behind at my neck and shoulder. I sidestepped and switched the flashlight to full power. A blinding white beam burst through the dim yellow sand. He instinctively shut his eyes and raised an arm. I kicked the back of his knee, pulled the short blade hidden in my boot, and severed the tendons of his sword hand. His scream had barely escaped when the other man lunged at me. I sprayed the pepper spray I had already taken out straight into his face. He covered his eyes and staggered backward. I gave him no chance to recover, snatched up the fallen saber, and slammed its blunt spine into his temple. Both men fell onto the sand. One lay unconscious, the other curled into a ball in agony. I pinned his wrist beneath my foot and held the saber point to his throat. "Who gave the order?" "No one gave an order. You betrayed the Crown Prince and tried to flee to Northern Liang." The blade pressed half an inch deeper. A bead of blood rolled along its edge. The Eastern Palace guards keep their death-sworn tokens in their left boots. When you receive a secret order, you cut your right thumb and leave a print in the register. The wound on your right hand has not even scabbed over. Say one more useless word, and I will cut out your tongue first. His pupils contracted sharply. From a hidden layer in his left boot, I retrieved an ebony token. In a concealed pocket in his belt, I found a sheet of paper folded impossibly small. It bore only 12 Chinese characters. "If the princess leaves the bridal carriage, leave her in black sand. No report required." The Eastern Palace's private seal had been stamped at the bottom. I looked at the familiar Chai Dragon seal, and the last trace of old affection in my heart vanished. A dull thunder of hooves suddenly sounded in the distance. It was not the bridal escort returning. The sound was measured and heavy, like thunder rolling beneath the earth. Black banners emerged from the curtain of sand. Thousands of black-armored cavalry spread across the mouth of the valley and drew their bows in unison. Their leader wore black armor and a dark red cloak, seated on a horse black from mane to tail. He did not wear the silver mask spoken of in rumors, yet his face was colder than a blade. Narrow eyes swept over the fallen guards before settling on the Eastern Palace order in my hand. Xiaoyan, Regent of Northern Liang. By protocol, he should have been at the northern end of Eagle's Beak Gorge today to receive the marriage treaty, yet Zhao Heng had taken the bridal carriage across the handover point early, while I, the true marriage princess, had been abandoned in Black Sand Valley, a place beyond the jurisdiction of either kingdom. Xiaoyan raised one hand. Thousands of bows lowered together, though not a single string slackened. "Princess Anning, formally. Where is your convoy? They used me as bait and went to kill you." Silence fell on all sides. The soldiers of Northern Liang stared at me as though I were mad. I tossed the secret order over. A guard beside Xiaoyan caught it and presented it to him. After reading it, Xiaoyan showed no anger. He merely asked, "Why should I believe you?" "The marriage delegation is missing 3 supply wagons. They do not carry dowry goods, but lamp oil and crossbow bolts made to Northern Liang's Imperial Guard specifications. Someone plans to burn your command tent tonight, then make everyone believe the assassins came from your own guard." His gaze darkened slightly. "How do you know?" "Because I counted the wheel ruts all the way here. A wagon carrying silk does not leave tracks 3 inches deep, nor does its axle smell of lamp oil. I threw the blood-stained saber onto the ground. If your highness does not believe me, you may kill me now. But once you die, the young emperor will lose his pillar. Chancellor Guchong will control the sovereign and seize the court. Zhao Heng will march north amid the chaos, and Northern Liang will lose every one of the 6 cities south of Black Sand Valley." Xiaoyan stared at me for a long moment, then suddenly urged his horse forward. The towering warhorse stopped before me. He leaned down from the saddle and lightly lifted my chin with the tip of his sword. "You know too much. That is precisely why I am valuable. What do you want from me in exchange?" I looked in the direction where the bridal carriage had disappeared and gave a soft laugh. "A new identity. Since great, Sheng does not want me as its crown princess and has no intention of letting me live as Northern Liang's empress. I will choose for myself just this once." I raised my hand and pushed his blade aside. Enunciating every word, I said, "Xiaoyan, instead of taking back a political hostage constrained at every turn, marry me. I will uncover the traitors for you and protect your grain route, and you will make Zhao Heng regret that he is alive." Xiaoyan neither agreed nor refused. He ordered his men to bind the 2 eastern palace guards and take me back to the military camp at the northern end of Eagle's Beak Gorge. Along the way, Northern Liang soldiers kept looking back at me. Some were wary, some disdainful, and some openly curious. Dressed in the brocade robes of a great Sheng princess, blood staining my sleeves, I rode alone behind Northern Liang's regent. No matter how one looked at me, I did not resemble a dutiful princess sent for a political marriage. As we entered the camp, I noticed more than a dozen empty grain wagons piled in the southeastern corner. Their wheels were exactly the same width as those of the 3 suspicious supply wagons I had seen on the road, yet fresh mud covered the great Sheng markings on their shafts. "Where did those wagons come from?" I asked. Without turning, Xiaoyan answered, "They arrived yesterday, supposedly. The Liangzhou Merchants Guild donated the fodder." "Those are not fodder wagons." At last he glanced at me. "Clay jars filled with lamp oil cannot be jolted too violently, so the wheels are wrapped in 2 layers of cowhide to absorb the shocks. There are still stitch holes along the outer rims of those wheels where the cowhide was removed." I lowered my voice. "The wagons have entered the camp, but their cargo is gone. Whoever intends to strike tonight is already inside." Xiaoyan summoned Pei Su, commander of his personal guard, and gave a single order: "Seal the camp, alert no one." I was placed in a small tent beside the command tent. Qingdai was gone, and there was not a single familiar person by my side. 2 Northern Liang maids brought water and clean clothing. They kept their heads bowed throughout and did not say a word to me. I washed the sand from my face, changed into a narrow-sleeved riding outfit, and took an energy bar and a bag of electrolyte water from my storage space. Using the warehouse repeatedly made my temples throb, and my fingertips grew cold. This was the limitation imposed by the space. The more and heavier the things I removed, the greater the toll on my body. If I forced myself to move several hundred jin at once, I would lose consciousness outright. The warehouse could save me in an emergency, but it could not live my life for me. After nightfall, Xiaoyan summoned me to the command tent. Only 2 lamps burned inside. He sat behind a long table, in addition to the Eastern Palace order. An ebony token taken from the 2 guards and a blank travel permit lay before him. "The secret order is genuine," he said. "I know. But an order from Zhao Heng to kill you proves only that the 2 of you have turned against each other. It does not prove that you deserve my trust. Your Highness does not need to trust me." I sat opposite him. "We need only share the same enemy." Xiaoyan tapped his knuckles softly against the table. You said there were 3 wagons of lamp oil in the welcoming delegation. Pei Su searched the entire camp and found none. Of course he found none. I picked up the camp defense map from the table. If they meant only to burn your tent, they would never have needed 3 wagons of oil. Their true target is the grain depot on the western side. Once it burns, everyone will rush to fight the fire. The assassins will break into the command tent amid the chaos and kill you with Northern Liang Imperial Guard crossbow bolts. Afterward, the evidence will show that your own Imperial Guard rebelled, leaving Great Sheng blameless. If so, why did they leave the empty wagons in the southeast? Because the southeast is close to the drainage ditch. The oil has already been poured into wooden water barrels and carried in batches to the kitchens and stables. Pei Su's expression changed. He immediately turned and hurried out. Less than half an hour later, he returned with 2 cooks under guard and a wooden barrel that appeared to contain water, but whose bottom layer was soaked with oil. At last, Xiao Yan looked at me differently. Were you truly nothing more than a general's daughter in Great Sheng? What else would I be? Zhao Heng is indeed blind. I could not help laughing. Now that your highness is praising me, does that mean you are ready to accept my proposal? Why the hurry? Many women want to be the regent's consort. You are the first who has dared order people about in my military camp. Then your highness should cherish me. Xiao Yan did not respond. He merely told Pei Su to redeploy the defenses according to my assessment. More men were openly stationed at the western grain depot. All documents were removed from the command tent, and Xiao Yan himself moved into an inconspicuous medical tent. I did not remain idle either. The warehouse contained a batch of magnetic door alarms intended for wilderness rescue. Their batteries were limited. Once one was used, it was gone. I took out 6 and hid them near the grain depot's back door, the medical tent and the drainage ditch. When Pei Su asked what they were, I told him only that they were mechanisms passed down in my family that would shriek when disturbed. Just after the 3rd night watch began, the western camp indeed caught fire. Flames raced along the oil that had been poured in advance and leapt onto the haystacks, instantly illuminating half the night sky. Horns blared through the camp as soldiers carried water toward the grain depot. At the same time, a shadow climbed out of the drainage ditch, slipped past the patrols, and headed straight for the command tent. The first alarm suddenly screamed. Startled, the assassin changed course, only to find the command tent empty. Pei Su led men in from both sides. The assassin fired 3 bolts in succession, each fletching carved with the wolf head emblem of Northern Liang's Imperial Guard. Another group took advantage of the chaos to charge the medical tent. Xiao Yan was already waiting for them. From half a camp away, I heard weapons clashing. By the time I arrived, 7 bodies lay on the ground. A slash had torn Xiao Yan's black robe, and the sword in his hand rested against the shoulder of the last survivor. The man was Han Yu, deputy envoy of the welcoming delegation. He came from Northern Liang's Imperial Guard and had served beside Xiao Yan for 8 years. Who ordered you? Xiao Yan asked. Han Yu clenched his teeth. Pei Su searched his clothes and found a small copper box. The Gu clan crest was engraved inside its lid, but the box contained a lock of a woman's long hair and half an Eastern Palace waist token from Great Sheng. The moment Han Yu saw the copper box fall into Xiao Yan's hand, his face turned deathly white. He tried to speak, but black blood suddenly spilled from the corner of his mouth. I rushed forward and forced his jaws apart. A shattered poison capsule was hidden in a back tooth. The warehouse contained gastric lavage and emergency medical supplies, but nothing could save a man from a poison that sealed the throat within moments. He convulsed several times and seized my sleeve. Miss Lin, after only those words he died. Lin Wanru, the Galu crest, the Eastern Palace waist token, and Lin Wanru's name, 3 strands that had once seemed wholly unrelated converged for the first time in Northern Liang's military camp. Xiao Yan wiped the blood from his sword and told Pei Su, seal off all news of tonight's events. Put out word that I was injured in the fire and have fallen unconscious. Pei Su left to carry out the order. I looked at Xiao Yan's wound. Treat that first. It is superficial. The men who wounded you carried poison in their teeth. Who can guarantee there was none on their blades? The military physician inspected the blade and indeed detected a faint, strange odor. I took sealed saline solution and disinfecting supplies from my space and handed them to him, instead of pretending to be a miracle doctor and treating Xiaoyan myself. The physician's surname was Su. He had followed Xiaoyan for years. Though he had never seen such things, he immediately understood the value of sterile water and clean cloth. After the wound was cleaned, Xiaoyan dismissed everyone but me. Your sleeves cannot conceal so many things. What does your highness wish to ask? The object that shone, those mechanisms that screamed when someone approached, and the medicinal solution just now, where did they come from, my dowry? He laughed, but there was no humor in his eyes. Jiang Nian, I do not like being lied to. Nor do I like entrusting my life to a man I met half a day ago. I met his gaze. If your highness wants to know, answer one question first. Will you marry me? Outside the tent, people still hurried back and forth fighting the fire, their shadows moving across the canvas walls. Xiaoyan remained silent for a long time. Then he untied a black iron regent's token from his waist and placed it on the table. I can petition His Majesty to dissolve your political betrothal to the imperial family, then welcome you into my residence with all the rights due the regent's principal consort. What are your conditions? Find Guchong's agents in the army and help me secure the Liangzhou grain route, and you will hand over every piece of evidence you possess against Zhao Heng. I picked up the token. Agreed. Do not agree too quickly. Xiaoyan closed a hand around my wrists. His grip was not painful, yet I could not pull free. Once you marry me, if you dare betray me, I will kill you with my own hands. I turned his hand over and pressed the token back into his palm. What a coincidence. I demand the same of my husband. Xiaoyan narrowed his eyes. After a moment, he suddenly laughed. We marry in the border city 3 days from now. Before then, I will send Zhao Heng a gift. He ordered the bodies of the 2 Eastern Palace guards placed in coffins, but kept alive the man whose hand tendons I had severed. The dead can only make him angry. A living man will make him afraid, Xiaoyan said. Tell Zhao Heng that the woman he abandoned in Black Sand Valley did not die, and that she is going to marry me, Xiaoyan said. We would marry in 3 days by dawn the next morning. A secret edict from Northern Liang's young emperor had arrived in Liangzhou. The 12-year-old Xiao Yu wrote clearly that Princess Anning, sent by Great Sheng, had been abandoned on the journey, and Great Sheng had therefore broken the original marriage alliance first. Northern Liang would not make matters difficult for a lone woman, and would permit Jiang Nian to choose whether to stay or leave. If she wished to marry the regent, she would be wed with all rights due the principal consort of a prince. Beneath the imperial seal at the end of the edict was a line written in an obviously childish hand. Imperial uncle has finally agreed to take a wife. The gifts must be generous. I could not suppress my amusement after reading it. The young emperor seems very worried that you will never find a wife. Without changing expression, Xiaoyan rolled up the edict. He is merely afraid I will vent my temper on his schoolwork. Then by marrying into your household, am I not saving His Majesty's life? If you believe the merit great enough, you may ask him for a reward yourself when we return to the capital. Xiaoyan was efficient, but he did not treat the wedding carelessly. Liangzhou had no senior members of the imperial clan, so an elderly commandery, prince sent by Northern Liang's court of the imperial clan, presided over the ceremony. The regent's residence opened its granaries and held a feast, rewarding the soldiers who defended the city and giving the common people a hot meal. Red silk hung all the way from the city gate to the residence. When the wind blew, the entire city looked as though a long river of fire had ignited. My wedding robes were altered from ceremonial garments kept in reserve by Northern Liang's imperial household. I had neither the miles of red bridal finery sent by Great Sheng nor Jiang relatives to see me off. Yet when I entered the bridal sedan, my heart felt lighter than it had on the day I left the capital. Back then, the entire court had said I was sacrificing myself for the realm. Standing beneath the palace gates, Zhao Heng promised to escort me safely to Northern Liang. Though I knew he was bringing Lin Wanru with him, I still believed he would at least never gamble with my life. It turned out that truly letting go of someone meant neither weeping nor hating them. It meant finally admitting that you had judged them wrongly. The bridal sedan stopped before the gates of the regent's residence, but the customary call for the bride to emerge did not sound. A moment later, Pei Su reported from beyond the curtain, "Your Highness, the Crown Prince of Great Sheng has arrived." Zhao Heng had come sooner than Xiao Yan expected. He had 300 Eastern Palace guards blocking the far end of the long avenue. Behind him stood Great Sheng's reassembled ceremonial procession. Lin Wanru had come as well, seated in the bridal carriage that had belonged to me and dressed in plain white. Her face remained pale, but her eyes never left the red silk at the gates of the Regent's residence. Zhao Heng rode up to the sedan and spoke through tightly suppressed anger. "Zhang Nian, get out." I remained seated. "I know you are angry. What happened in Black Sand Valley was done by the guards without authorization. I have already punished everyone involved. Come back with me now, and I can petition Father Emperor to restore your position as Crown Princess." I lifted the curtain, restore it. The betrothal was dissolved only as a temporary measure by Father Emperor to appease Northern Liang. Now that the marriage alliance has failed, you naturally remain mine. He spoke as though it were self-evident, as though my near death in Black Sand Valley were merely a misunderstanding he could dismiss with a few words. "Your Highness." Supported by a maid, Lin Wanru stepped down from the carriage and looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Sister Zhang is merely confused for the moment. She fell into Northern Liang's military camp all alone and must have suffered many threats. If we reason with her gently, she will understand Your Highness's painstaking intentions. All alone." I looked at the bridal carriage behind her. Miss Lin took my carriage, my maid and my dowry. You seem to know very well just how alone I was. Qingdai was shoved forward from the rear of the procession. Her wrists were covered in purple bruises left by ropes. The moment she saw me, tears flooded her eyes. "My lady, they would not let this servant leave the carriage to look for you. This servant heard the Eastern Palace men say there would be no survivors left in Black Sand Valley." Zhao Heng cut her off sharply. "A lowly maid babbling nonsense is not fit to testify before envoys of 2 kingdoms. If she is unfit, then am I fit?" Northern Liang soldiers dragged the Eastern Palace guard I had kept alive onto the avenue. The tendons in his right hand had been severed, and his face was ashen. The moment he saw Zhao Heng, he began struggling desperately. "Your Highness, save me." This subordinate acted on Commander Chen's orders. Commander Chen personally handed me that secret order as well. At last, Zhao Heng's expression changed. "Do you know the penalty for slandering the heir to the throne? This subordinate would never dare slander you." Commander Chen said that as soon as the princess left the bridal carriage, we were to leave her in Black Sand. The death-sworn register is still in the Eastern Palace guardroom. The blood print from my right hand can be verified. Northern Liang officials and commoners packed both sides of the avenue. Their murmurs grew louder and louder. Zhao Heng drew his sword to kill the man, but a black feathered arrow shot from within the residence and struck the ground half an inch before his blade. Xiao Yan descended the steps in scarlet wedding robes. He wore no armor and carried no sword at his waist. Yet the hundreds of black-armored guards behind him stepped forward as one. "The Crown Prince of Great Sheng is trying to kill one of my men at my wedding. Do you hold Northern Liang in such contempt?" Through clenched teeth, Zhao Heng said, "He is a deserter from Great Sheng. He is also the witness to the attempted murder of my consort." Xiao Yan walked to the bridal sedan and extended a hand to me. I placed mine in his palm, and he helped me down with steady strength. When Zhao Heng saw me dressed in red, his eyes went unfocused for an instant. Though we had been betrothed for years, he had never seen me wear such a vivid color. Lin Wanru favored pale elegance, so he had declared that a woman should prize restrained grace. To please him, I locked the ruby headdress the Zhang family had prepared for me at the bottom of a chest, and wore only moonlight white or pale blue even on my birthdays. Now I wore a golden phoenix crown sent by Northern Liang, a dot of vermilion between my brows, and stood beside another man. It was as though Zhao Heng were truly seeing me for the first time. "Nianian," his voice softened. "Do not gamble with your lifelong happiness merely to spite me. Your Highness misunderstands. Whomever I marry from this day forward has nothing to do with you." I took a brocade box from Qingdai and removed the Crown Prince's jade pendant I had worn for 6 years. Zhao Heng instinctively reached out, assuming I meant to return it to him. Instead, I placed the pendant on the stone steps and crushed it beneath my foot. The crisp crack rang along the avenue. From the moment you ordered me abandoned in Black Sand Valley, there has been neither betrothal nor old affection between Jiang Nian and you. If you attend this Northern Liang wedding as the crown prince of Great Sheng, you are welcome at the feast. If you harass the regent's consort as my former betrothed, the laws of Northern Liang will teach you what propriety means. Veins bulged at Zhao Heng's temples. Do you truly think Xiao Yan married you because he likes you? He wants only the Zhang family's military power and the evidence in your hands. The instant you cease to be useful, he will be the first to kill you. At least I can recognize her value. Xiao Yan wrapped an arm around my waist, his voice indifferent. Unlike your highness, who used a pearl to brace a carriage wheel and then complained it hurt his foot. Pei Su raised a hand and 3 wooden chests were carried into the center of the avenue. The first contained weapons taken from assassins in the welcoming delegation. The second held the vehicle plates removed from the 3 lamp oil wagons. In the third lay Han used copper box, the Gu clan crest, and half an Eastern Palace waist token. I have already ordered 3 copies made of this evidence. 1 is on its way to the Great Sheng Palace, 1 to Northern Liang's capital, and 1 will remain in Liangzhou. Xiao Yan looked at Zhao Heng. Does your highness wish to take my consort back because you miss your old affection, or because you fear what she might say? Lin Wanru's fingers clenched sharply inside her sleeves. I had been watching her, so I did not miss the movement. Zhao Heng looked back at her as well. For the first time, doubt appeared in his eyes. Lin Wanru's eyes immediately reddened. Your highness, I do not know why my hair was in that copper box. Sister Jiang has never liked me, perhaps. Perhaps I wanted to frame you, so I first predicted that I would be abandoned, then ran to Northern Liang's military camp to assassinate Xiao Yan, and finally planted the evidence on an assassin certain to die. I finished for her, Miss Lin, before inventing a story. You should at least make sure its beginning and end agree. Laughter that no one could suppress sounded around us. Her face flushed red, then turned white. At last, she could say nothing. Xiao Yan had a seat placed for Zhao Heng at a lower table. If Zhao Heng refused to attend, it would amount to admitting that Great Sheng rejected the young emperor's diplomatic letter dissolving the marriage alliance. If he attended, he would have to watch me marry another man. In the end, he sat down, compared with a woman. He was even less willing to surrender the dignity of a crown prince before envoys from both kingdoms. As we bowed to heaven and earth, Xiao Yan held one end of the red silk. I lowered my head in ceremony and saw from the corner of my eye that Zhao Heng had squeezed a crack into his wine cup. Lin Wanru sat beside him, her face more ghastly than a corpse's. After the ceremony was complete, Xiao Yan personally poured 2 cups of wine. He set one before Zhao Heng. This cup is to thank your highness for failing to recognize a treasure before your eyes. Zhao Heng did not take it. The black armored guards behind Pei Su placed their hands on their sword hilts at the same time. Zhao Heng stared at me, then finally raised his head and drained the wine. Blood dripped from his palm onto the table. I could not tell whether broken porcelain had cut him or he had pierced his own skin by clenching his fist. I did not look at him again. Possessiveness that comes too late is not profound love. It is merely the shock of an arrogant man discovering that something he once considered his will no longer submit to his control. By the time the guests departed, midnight was near. A pair of dragon and phoenix candles burned in the bridal chamber. Xiao Yan closed the door. Instead of lifting my veil like an ordinary bridegroom, he first placed before me a marriage certificate whose seals had only just dried. The certificate had been prepared in triplicate, 1 copy for the residents, 1 for the court of the imperial clan, and 1 for me. It did not call me Princess Anning of Great Sheng. It named me only as Jiang Nian, daughter of the general who guards the north. Why did you not use my title? I asked. They gave you that title only so they could send you away in a political marriage. Xiao Yan removed the phoenix crown from my head. You do not like it, so there is no need to bring it into my residence. The moment the heavy crown came away, the back of my neck relaxed. Xiao Yan's fingers brushed skin reddened by the hairpins, and his movements paused. Does it hurt? Less than the blade in Black Sand Valley. You need not constantly remind me of that day. You saved yourself once. I am reminding myself. Xiaoyan set the crown aside and poured 2 cups of nuptial wine. He did not press me about the storage space or use our wedding night to force me to reveal every trump card. He merely handed me 1 cup. Zhang Nian, although His Majesty sanctioned today's wedding, it arose from a bargain between us. If you are not ready, I will not force you. Is your Highness not afraid I may never be ready? Then I will wait forever. I had prepared many things to say on our wedding night, yet suddenly I needed none of them. Zhao Heng had once told me that he could give me the position of crown princess, but could not promise that the Eastern Palace would hold only 1 woman. He said the imperial succession concerned the foundation of the state and that I needed to be sensible. At the time, I believed all powerful men were the same, that a wife was merely part of family and authority. Xiaoyan held Northern Liang's military and political power, and his reputation was far more ruthless than Zhao Heng's. Yet when he truly had the right to demand something, he returned the choice to me. I lifted my wine cup and touched it lightly to his. Since this is a partnership, we should make several rules clear first. Go on. First, no concubines and no mistresses kept outside the household. If your Highness takes another woman, we separate immediately. The residence's accounts remain yours, and everything I brought remains mine. Xiaoyan raised 1 eyebrow. The things you brought, have you not wanted to ask all along? I will wait until you are willing to tell me second. You need not tell me everything about court and army affairs, but you may not deceive me about anything involving my life, the Zhang family, or the space. The space. I did not explain and continued. Third, if one day our interests no longer align, we can part ways. But neither of us may stab the other in the back. Xiaoyan drained his cup. I have 1 rule as well. Say it. When danger comes, you may not go off alone to die. What kind of rule is that? The residence has only 1 consort. It would be troublesome if she died. He spoke coolly, yet in the candlelight the tips of his ears showed a faint, nearly invisible red. I deliberately moved closer. Is trouble all you fear? Xiaoyan lowered his eyes to me. We were so close that I could smell the faint scent of pine on his robes and see the candlelight reflected in his eyes. For now, I am still afraid you will regret this, he said. Later, perhaps not. He bent his head and kissed me. At first, the kiss was very light, as though he were waiting for 1 last refusal. I did not retreat. Only then did his arm close around my waist, his grip tightening little by little. Just as our breathing grew unsteady, the hurried footsteps of a secret scout sounded outside the door. Xiaoyan closed his eyes, pressed his forehead to mine, and muttered a curse, holding back laughter. I pushed him away. It appears the Regent is destined to spend his wedding night discussing affairs of state. I will remember this debt. That night, just after Xiaoyan and I entered the bridal chamber, a travel-worn secret scout knelt outside the door. Your Highness, an urgent report from Great Sheng's capital. News that Princess Anning had committed treason had reached the capital, enraging the Sheng Emperor. Jiang Chongshan, the general who guards the north, had been stripped of military command. The entire Jiang household had been thrown into the imperial prison, and their residence would be confiscated the next day. The phoenix crown was still on my head, but my fingertips had already gone cold. The scout presented another letter sent by Zhao Heng. It contained only a single line. Zhang Nian, if you want your father to live, come back yourself. I meant to return to Great Sheng that very night. I threw the phoenix crown onto the table before I had even changed out of my wedding robes. Qingdai packed my belongings, but Peisu arrived with men and sealed the residence's side gate. Move aside. He clasped his hands and bowed his head. His Highness has ordered that the consort may not leave the residence tonight. This is my family affair. You are now the consort of Northern Liang's regent. Whether you live or die is no longer merely a fair. I drew the short sword at Qingdai's waist. Peisu did not fight back. He merely knelt before the gate. This subordinate is obeying orders. If your Highness insists on leaving, you must first walk over my corpse. Then let me see whom you intend to kill first. Xiaoyan's voice came from behind me. He had already changed out of his wedding robes and wore a cloak over a plain black robe. A moment ago, he had been entertaining guests in the front courtyard, but now not a trace of joy remained on his face. I gripped the sword. Zhao Heng has seized my father. I know he wants me. As long as I return, the Jiang family has a chance to survive. If you truly believe he will release them, then the blade you suffered in Black Sand Valley taught you nothing. I cannot do nothing. Going back to die is not taking action. Xiao Yan walked up to me, grasped the bare blade in one hand, and slowly pushed its point down. Zhao Heng did not seize the Jiang family merely to recover a woman. He wants the secret order in your hands, the Jiang family's former troops, and your testimony that I coerced the princess sent for marriage. The moment you cross Great Sheng's border, he will not free your father. He will simply gain another hostage. The edge cut his palm, and blood trickled between his fingers. I released the sword, but the anger lodged in my chest did not dissipate. Then tell me what I should do. Live first, then find a way. By staying locked in the residence and waiting for news. Zhang Nian, for the first time. He called me by my full name. I agreed to form an alliance with you, not to watch you lose your mind. If all you know is how to gamble with your own life, I will send you back this instant. I stared at him. Do you think I am afraid to die? I know you are not. That is precisely why death will find you more easily. The wind roared through the courtyard, and red lanterns swayed beneath the eaves. We faced each other one step apart. Neither of us retreated. After a long time, I bent to pick up the short sword and returned it to Qingdai. To the study, I said, bring every map of Great Sheng's border and capital. Xiao Yan looked at me once, then turned and led the way. In the study, we laid out each piece of known information. The Jiang family had been arrested too quickly. Less than 2 days had passed between news reaching the capital from the border and the confiscation of the general's residence. Zhao Heng must have prepared the charges in advance. The Sheng emperor might be enraged, but he did not necessarily want Zhang Chongshan dead. Most of the 200,000 soldiers in the Northern Defense Army were Jiang family veterans. Rashly executing their commander would throw morale into chaos. Zhao Heng wanted the military tally. As long as Zhang Chongshan refused to surrender it, Zhao Heng would keep the Jiang family alive. Xiao Yan immediately dispatched 2 groups of secret scouts. One would infiltrate the capital and contact the Jiang family's former subordinates. The other would watch Great Sheng's border army. He also ordered Northern Liang's envoys to present the Black Sand Valley order and the assassin's evidence to the Sheng emperor, and publicly demand to know why Great Sheng tolerated its heir's attempt to murder the princess sent for marriage. By the time all of this was done, dawn was near. At that moment, an urgent report arrived from the military camp. After the previous night's fire, men in the wounded barracks had begun developing high fevers and vomiting. More than 30 had already collapsed. Physician Xu suspected enteric fever, while more than half of Liang Zhou's medicinal stores had been destroyed in the fire. Xiao Yan rose immediately. I followed him to the camp. As soon as we approached the wounded barracks, I smelled rot mingled with blood and medicine. Sick men were crowded among ordinary casualties. The drinking water barrels stood beside the sewage ditch. Old bandages were washed and reused, and dirty water covered the floor. This was not a single illness. It was a pile of kindling ready to set the entire camp ablaze. Move every enteric fever patient out and establish 3 isolation areas, I told Physician Xu. 1 for those with high fever and vomiting, 1 for those exposed but not yet ill, and 1 for ordinary wounded soldiers. Boil all drinking water. Keep wells at least 100 paces from the sewage ditch. Those caring for different wards may not share clothing or equipment. Physician Xu hesitated. There are not enough empty tents in the camp. The drill ground south of the city is on high ground. Erect tents there. The tents in the storehouse burned as well. I looked at Xiao Yan. Clear the tent. Only you and Physician Xu remain. Pei Su led everyone else out. Once the flap fell closed, I stopped hiding my secret. With a thought, 20 folding disaster relief tents appeared on the open ground one after another, followed by several crates of masks and gloves, water purification tablets, disinfectant, and sealed gauze. When the last crate landed, my vision went black. I caught the corner of the table and barely kept myself from falling. Xiao Yan caught me around the waist. For the first time, his composure truly broke. Physician Xu stared at the supplies that had appeared from nowhere. His lips trembled for a long time, but not a single word emerged. This is my secret. Leaning against the table, I struggled for breath. It is not immortal magic, nor is it an inexhaustible treasure vault. It is only a warehouse that will never replenish. Most of what it holds is disaster relief equipment. There is enough food to feed 5,000 people for 3 months, no firearms, and it cannot hold living beings. Every batch I remove takes a toll on my body. Xiao Yan's supporting hand suddenly tightened. Why tell me now? Because these men cannot wait, and because you did not force me to answer last night. I looked at him. But you must promise that. Apart from Physician Shu, no fourth person will learn where these supplies came from. Publicly, say only that they were reserves the residents hid south of the city years ago. Physician Shu dropped to his knees and swore on the lives of his entire family. Xiao Yan did not answer immediately. He carried me to a chair, poured a cup of warm water, and waited until my fingers stopped trembling before he spoke. From this day forward, you may not remove so many things at once without my permission. The warehouse is mine. Your life is yours as well, but last night you nearly threw it away once, and today you nearly did it again. What is wrong with my governing my own consort? He said it so naturally that, for once, I had no reply. The disaster relief tents were erected on the southern drill ground that very day. Physician Shu selected reliable healers, and I explained how to use the masks, gloves, and disinfectant. The warehouse held antimicrobial medicine, but quantities were limited, and many illnesses could not be treated carelessly based on outward symptoms alone. I gave Physician Shu the medicine inventory, and allowed only him to decide what to use according to each condition. I had no intention of pretending to be a miracle doctor who could revive the dead. The true trouble soon spread from the military camp into the city. Several of the first soldiers to develop fevers had eaten at a tea stall in the south of the city. The storekeeper's family began falling ill one by one. Once the news spread, nearby residents moved out overnight. Some locked sick relatives inside their homes. Others surrounded the regent's residence and demanded that every infected soldier be driven from Liangzhou. Gu family agents planted in the city seized the opportunity to spread rumors. They claimed I had brought the pestilence from Great Sheng and that northern Liang suffered divine punishment for marrying a demoness from an enemy kingdom. Others said miraculous medicine was hidden at the southern drill ground. But the regent would save only soldiers, not commoners. The next morning, hundreds blocked the entrance to the drill ground. At the front was a woman holding a child whose face was bright red with fever and who could no longer speak. She knelt and begged through her tears, while the people behind her kept pressing forward, on the verge of breaking through the soldiers' line. "Open the gate," I ordered the defending commander. His expression changed drastically. "Your Highness, if we let them inside, the wards will descend into chaos. We will not let everyone inside. Mark out a triage area on the open ground outside the drill field, and sort them first by the severity of their symptoms. Treat critical patients first. Record the addresses of those who have been exposed. Give those without symptoms water purification tablets and instructions to boil their water, then send them home to observe themselves. But we do not have enough healers. There are 6 medical clinics in the city. The regent's residents will pay consultation fees to any physicians willing to come. Choose additional people from literate apothecary apprentices. They will only register patients and boil water. They are not to handle medicine. In full view of everyone, I lifted the child and carried him into the triage area. Then I told Qingdai to give her own mask to the woman. The crowd gradually quieted. That afternoon, however, Rejuvenation Hall, Liangzhou's largest medical shop, closed its doors. Its proprietor claimed that all his medicinal stock had sold out, but secret scouts discovered that he had hidden every measure of skullcap root, bupleurum, and fever medicine in his cellar. Intending to raise the price tenfold once the outbreak worsened, I did not immediately seize the shop. I went to its door carrying the residence's purchasing ledger and the emergency compact jointly signed by the city's medicine merchants. "Your Highness, the medicine is this humble man's private property." The proprietor blocked the cellar entrance. "Even the court cannot force me to sell it. No one is forcing you. The residents will pay the pre-outbreak market price plus 20%, in silver on the spot. 20% is not enough. I am the only man in the entire city with medicine now. I want at least 10 times the price." "Very well," I nodded. If you sell at 10 times the price today, the residents will pay 10 times the price. But when the outbreak ends, the 3 apothecaries owned by the residents will open directly across from you and keep their prices 10% below yours forever. The border, army, government offices, and every estate belonging to the residents will never buy so much as 1 qian of medicine from you again. Make your fortune this once, and afterward you need never do business in Liangzhou again. The proprietor's expression changed. The other 5 medicine merchants had accompanied me and stood outside. They too had intended to raise their prices, but after hearing my words, they immediately offered to supply medicine at the original price, if Rejuvenation Hall was excluded from military and government purchasing. Even the largest inventory would not sustain it for a year. In the end, the proprietor opened the cellar and accepted the 20% premium. I did not punish him because seeking profit is a merchant's nature, but I made everyone understand that in a crisis, one may earn money, one may not monopolize human lives. The drill ground wards thus gained a stable supply of medicine. Once the common people saw that the residents neither concealed the outbreak nor treated only soldiers, the rumors lost their power. Women in the city volunteered to sew masks. Carpenters copied the folding tent structure and built more simple wards. Even the temples cleared their side halls to house those under observation. 3 days later, the number of new patients began to decline. 7 days later, the first group of mild cases recovered from their fevers. The panic that had gripped the army gradually subsided as well. I did not distribute all the food in my space. Instead, the residents released 100 shy from its old reserves, prioritizing the sick wards and city defenders, then posted notices offering to buy grain from Liangzhou merchants at market price. The residents guaranteed payment with salt permits and the following year's commercial taxes, so merchants did not have to donate their goods or fear forcible military requisition. Standing outside the drill ground, Xiao Yan watched grain wagon after grain wagon roll in. You already have food. Why borrow from the merchants? Every sack I use is 1 sack gone forever. If I take it all out today, the people will treat me as an immortal. If I have nothing left tomorrow, they will call me a fraud. I handed him the grain purchase ledger. What truly saves a city is not one warehouse of grain, but rules that keep grain flowing into it. He turned several pages, then suddenly said, if Zhao Heng possessed half your clarity, his position as Great Sheng's heir would be secure. That is why it is not. I am very glad. I raised my head and met the faint smile in his eyes. At that moment, I suddenly understood. He was not glad that Zhao Heng was incompetent. He was glad Zhao Heng had thrown me away and into his hands. Just then, Pei Su strode over, interrupting what neither of us had yet put into words. Your Highness, news has come from Great Sheng's border. A deputy general of the Northern Defense Army received a handwritten mobilization order from General Jiang, commanding 30,000 soldiers to march north in secret. Impossible, I said immediately. If my father had truly meant to mobilize troops before his imprisonment, a handwritten order alone would not suffice. It would bear the military tally and seals jointly verified by 3 officers of Central Command. Pei Su presented the copy of the military order made by the secret scout. The handwriting was identical to my father's, and even the general's seal appeared flawless. Only the closing line read, break camp at once, permit no delay. My father never writes break camp in military documents. He always writes move camp. It is a habit he has maintained for decades to guard against forged orders. The seal is real, but the letter is false. I pressed a hand over the paper. Zhao Heng has obtained my father's general's seal. Xiao Yan looked toward the 30,000-man army advancing across the map. Your father remains in the imperial prison, yet the military seal has already left the capital. He intends to start a war in the Zhang family's name. The forged mobilization order did not take effect immediately. Deputy General Zhou He had followed my father for 20 years. The words break camp aroused his suspicion. While pretending to accept the order, he sent a trusted man on a detour through Liangzhou to place it in my hands for verification. Zhao Heng believed that stealing the general's seal would let him command the Zhang family army. He did not understand that an army that had fought real wars would never recognize a single seal alone. I sent Zhou He 4 Chinese characters in reply. Hold position. Await orders. I used the military code my father had taught me. The first character of each line, read in sequence, said seal lost, commander imprisoned. Once he understood, he would find a way to steady the troops. But this could only delay matters, not resolve them. Since Zhao Heng dared mobilize the army, Great Sheng had clearly prepared to tear up the peace agreement. Someone in northern Liang's court was also working with him from within. Xiao Yan had to return to the capital and sever the influence Guchong had planted in the military grain offices and imperial guard. By the day we left Liangzhou, the enteric fever outbreak was under control. I left the 20 modern tents behind, had craftsmen copy their structure in simplified form, and wrote down procedures for water purification, isolation, and sewage disposal for physician shoe supplies would eventually run out. Methods could remain. It took 7 days of hard riding to travel from Liangzhou to northern Liang's capital, Yanjing. Xiao Yan spent most of the journey handling military dispatches. I had assumed marriage merely gave us a cloak of lawful identity, and that privately we would continue living separate lives. Yet at every relay station, he had my room arranged in the main courtyard and our meals placed at the same table. When trackers came at night, he never left me at the rear. Instead, he thrust a hand crossbow directly into my hands. "Are you not afraid I will shoot the wrong person?" I asked. Anyon, dressed in black, masked and climbing a wall at midnight, is a valid target. What if it is one of your highness's own shadow guards? If he cannot even scale the wall around the consort's courtyard, he is of no use to me. He sounded entirely serious. For a moment I could not decide whether this was trust or whether Northern Liang's regent simply selected his subordinates with unusual cruelty. When we reached Yanjing, no ceremonial procession waited outside the city gates to welcome the regent's consort. There were only the cold stares of imperial clansmen and court officials. Guchong stood at their head. Nearly 60, he had neatly groomed hair and beard and wore the purple robe of a first-rank official. His manner was as gentle as that of an honest elder. Had I not seen the copper box bearing the Jiyu clan crest with my own eyes, I would have struggled to connect him to the assassination at the border. "Your Highness's safe return is a blessing to Northern Liang." He bowed to Xiao Yan, then turned his gaze toward me. "However, the princess sent by Great Sheng for a political marriage has abruptly become the regent's consort. Criticism is inevitable. The Empress Dowager awaits you in the palace. Your Highness and Madame Jiang are requested to enter and explain." He called me Madame Jiang, not Your Highness. Xiao Yan did not even dismount. His Majesty personally bestowed this marriage. If the Chancellor objects, he may ask His Majesty. My consort is weary from the journey and will not enter the palace today. A censor behind Guchong immediately stepped forward. "Your Highness, Madame Jiang's identity is unclear, and her entanglement with Great Sheng's crown prince remains unresolved. How can she control the regent's household affairs?" "Who said she would control the household affairs?" Everyone's expressions relaxed slightly. Xiao Yan continued. "She controls my entire fortune and the regent's seals." The city gate fell utterly silent. I looked at him. He appeared not to notice my surprise, and merely ordered Pei Su to hand Qingdai a heavy box of keys. "When I am away from the residence, my consort's command carries the same authority as mine." Those words carried more weight than any welcoming procession. At last, the smile on Guchong's face faded. The regent's residence was far larger than the temporary residence in Liangzhou and far more chaotic. Before I had been inside for half a day, the inner court steward Liang Fu arrived with 6 managers to hand over the accounts. The ledgers filled 2 entire chests. Their covers were new and their handwriting neat. At first glance, there was not the slightest problem. Liang Fu smiled ingratiatingly. "His Highness spends most of the year away, so the residence's properties have always been managed according to old practice. Your Highness has only just arrived in Yanjing and is unfamiliar with Northern Liang prices. If there is anything you do not understand, please ask this old servant." There is indeed one thing I do not understand. I opened the grain estate ledger. In the 11th month of last year, the Western estate harvested 3,600 shori of millet. 40% was lost after it entered storage. Are Northern Liang's rats larger than Great Sheng's oxen, or did the granary roof grow a mouth? Liang Fu's smile stiffened. There was heavy snowmelt last year, and the grain grew damp. Grain destroyed by damp and mold should have records of its removal and burning, signed jointly by the estate head, storehouse clerk and inspector. There is not a single one here. I opened the cloth shop ledger. Next, 800 bolts of fine cloth were transported from Qingzhou to Yanjing at a cartage cost of 1,400 taels. According to the distance you recorded, the freight for each bolt would be enough to hire 2 horses to escort it alone. Yet the transport company's books show that it charged the residents only 600 taels. Last came the apothecaries. The residence's 3 apothecaries had reported losses for 5 consecutive years. Yet every year they purchased large quantities of medicines for blade wounds and poisons. The medicine had neither entered the residence nor been sold in the shops. It had simply been written off as damaged by rats and insects. Where it had gone required no explanation. Sweat beaded on Liang Fu's forehead. Your Highness has seen only a brief portion of the accounts and may have misunderstood. Northern Liang's customs differ from Great Sheng's. Accounts can be falsified, goods cannot. I close the ledger, seal the Western Grain Estate, the Qingzhou cloth shop, and all 3 apothecaries. Question every proprietor, estate head, and storehouse clerk separately. Anyone who tries to coordinate testimony in private will have his legs broken before he is handed to the authorities. An elderly manager's expression darkened. Your Highness has only just entered the household, yet you cause such upheaval. Are you not afraid of chilling the hearts of old retainers? These people have served since the late Emperor's reign. The fact that they shelter behind the title of the late Emperor's retainers is precisely why they must be investigated. I looked at him. If you are innocent, you will be released tomorrow. If you are not, then the residence has already shown great mercy by allowing you to live until today. He tried to argue further, but Peisu had already led black armored guards to block the hall doors. Arresting them was only the first step. The true difficulty was making 12 false ledgers contradict one another. I did not have Peisu use torture. Instead, I confined the 12 managers in separate courtyards and gave each a sheet of blank paper. I ordered them to write where they had been, whom they had seen, and how much silver they had handled on the 7th day of the 3rd month the previous year. Liang Fu thought it an ordinary inquiry and wrote that he had been inspecting the residence's storehouses. The grain estate head claimed he had delivered grain into the city. The apothecary proprietor wrote that heavy rain had forced him to keep the shop closed all day. But Yanjing's local chronicle recorded clear skies throughout that day. Liang Fu's signature was absent from the storehouse inspection records. As for the grain estate, the number of delivery wagons in its statement differed from the city gate tax register by 17. In the second round, I showed each man a small portion of another's testimony. Every one of them believed his companions had already confessed, and eager to save himself, rushed to shift the blame. In less than an hour, accounts that had once fitted together seamlessly shattered into more than a dozen pieces. Liang Fu still denied everything, insisting that every tale had been spent according to old practice. I had his wife and 2 sons invited into the residence. I neither questioned nor frightened them. I simply asked them to state the family's assets in front of one another. Madame Liang said they owned 2 small shops in the south of the city. The elder son said his father had just bought a hot spring estate the previous year, while the younger boasted that the family owned 3 merchant ships in Qingzhou. A resident steward earning less than 200 taels a year controlled assets worth more than 30,000. Liang Fu's face went ashen. At last he fell to his knees. Your Highness, this old servant lost his judgment for a moment. Everyone in the residence takes a share. Had this old servant refused, he would have been excluded. Besides, Chancellor Gu said the silver was being used to win court officials over for His Highness. If you embezzled silver, I could punish you according to law. But raising private soldiers for the Gu family is no momentary lapse. I ordered the residents to pay all servants the 3 months of wages they were owed, then distributed a portion of the recovered silver among tenant farmers exploited by the managers. Once the news spread, accountants, drivers, and storehouse laborers, who had once been afraid to speak, began reporting what they knew. Some surrendered secret duplicate ledgers. Some revealed monthly delivery routes. One elderly storehouse worker even led us to Gu family sealing wax hidden behind the wall of a well. The supposedly unbreakable network of old retainers in the residence loosened the moment the first unpaid wage was returned. I was not better at threatening people than Guchong. I merely showed those pressed to the very bottom that they could speak and live and reclaim what belonged to them. By the time Xiao Yan returned from the palace, all 12 residence managers had been locked in the woodshed. He entered the study and looked at the ledgers covering the floor. I was gone for only 2 hours. Do you think I was too slow? I fear the woodshed may not be large enough. I pushed a neatly organized relationship chart toward him. Liang Fu's daughter had married a lieutenant of the Imperial Guard's left battalion. The apothecary proprietor's nephew served as a retainer in the Chancellor's household. On the 7th day of every month, the Western Estate head delivered grain to an abandoned temple outside the city. The 12 men appeared to manage separate affairs, but all were connected to the Liu family. After reading the chart, Xiao Yan's expression gradually turned cold. I have spent most of these years at the border. The Empress Dowager appointed the residence's old servants. I knew their hands were not clean, but I did not realize the rot had spread this far. It is not that you did not know. You simply placed every capable person in the army and believed the loss of a few thousand taels in the inner household did not matter to the greater situation. Is my consort lecturing me? I am reminding you. There is no difference between losing a grain depot on the battlefield and hiding a blade beside your bed. He suddenly reached out and pulled me before him. I collided with his chest and instinctively steadied myself against his shoulders. Then I must trouble my consort to clear every blade from beside my bed. Is your highness not afraid that I am the largest blade of all? If you wanted me dead, you would not have warned me about the assassination in Black Sand Valley, nor would you have produced life-saving supplies in the wounded barracks. His thumb gently brushed beneath my eye. You have not slept well these past few days. I was about to step away when Qingdai reported urgently from outside. Your highnesses, someone has come from the palace. The Empress Dowager commands the consort to enter the palace for questioning at once. The Empress Dowager had prepared not a family banquet, but an interrogation. The Palace of Benevolent Tranquility was filled with women of the imperial clan. Guchong's younger sister, Grand Consort Gu, sat below the Empress Dowager. On the table lay petitions written in blood by relatives of the residence managers. They accused me of establishing a private tribunal and hounding the late Emperor's old servants to death on my very first day in the residence. Madame Zhang, the Empress Dowager rolled prayer beads between her fingers. Northern Liang is not your general's residence in Great Sheng. Even if the residence's old servants committed wrongs, they should have been handed to the court of the imperial clan, who gave a woman from an enemy kingdom the audacity to seal estates and arrest men. I presented the young emperor's marriage edict and the regent's seals. His Majesty gave me my status. The regent gave me my authority. If the Empress Dowager believes neither counts, she may revoke both before all the officials of the court. Grand Consort Gu sneered. What a sharp tongue. You claim the accounts are false. Do you have concrete evidence? I do. As arranged, Pei Su carried into the palace the objects recovered from the abandoned temple. Its cellar contained no Buddhist scriptures, only bundled military crossbows, 500 sets of Imperial Guard armor and uniforms, and a chest of partially used Yu family sealing wax. At the very bottom lay the true ledger of medicinal supplies, recording how the Liu family had used the regent's apothecaries to provision private soldiers. Everyone in the hall changed color. I placed the ledger before Grand Consort Liu. It is not that the residence could not afford its old retainers. The residence has been raising soldiers for the Liu family. The prayer beads in the Empress Dowager's hand stopped moving. Grand Consort Gu still tried to argue. What can one abandoned temple prove? Perhaps someone planted the evidence deliberately. Then let the court of the imperial clan verify the foundry marks on the weapons and armor, the batch numbers of the medicines, the Gu sealing wax, and the exchanged banknotes. Every item has an origin. If your highness believes this insufficient, I can continue investigating. I paused and looked at several Gu women kneeling outside the hall. I only fear that by the end, not a shred of dignity will remain for these so-called retainers of the late emperor. The Empress Dowager remained silent for a long time. Finally, she ordered the court of the imperial clan to take custody of the witnesses and evidence and acknowledged my authority to put the regent's residence in order. As I left the Palace of Benevolent Tranquility, Guchong stood waiting at the end of the palace path. "Your Highness is remarkably capable." His smile remained gentle, but investigating accounts too thoroughly is not always wise. Water that is too clear holds no fish. "You are mistaken, Chancellor." I stopped before him. "I do not care how many fish swim in the water. I care whether they feed on grass or on people." The smile vanished from his eyes for an instant. That night, Liang Fu finally broke under interrogation. The missing medicines from the residence, he confessed, were a minor sum. What the Gu family had truly diverted was 300,000 shy of Northern Liang's military grain. The grain had not been sold. It had been delivered in batches to abandoned warehouses in the southeast, close to the Great Sheng border, a place where such vast stores would never be needed under ordinary circumstances. By the time Pei Su arrived with men, the warehouses were empty. They caught only one gravely wounded guard. Before dying, he gasped out a sentence. "Miss Lin has already obtained the Great Sheng Crown Prince's half of the military tally. In 7 days, Northern Liang will fall." The 300,000 shy of military grain never entered a single Northern Liang depot. Using his authority as Chancellor, Guchong issued blank documents for disaster relief and river repairs. He divided the grain among hundreds of civilian wagons and sent it along the southeastern trade route toward the border between the two kingdoms. Half would sustain the Giyu family's private army. The other half would conveniently fall into Great Sheng's hands after Zhao Heng launched his invasion. Zhao Heng believed he had gained Guchong's aid. Guchong was merely using him as the blade that would split open Northern Liang's gates. Only 5 days remained before the 7-day deadline named by the dying guard. Xiaoyan mobilized troops through the night. Northern Liang could assemble fewer than 50,000 soldiers in the short term, and 20,000 of them had to defend Yanjing and the young emperor. Liang Zhou had 18,000 defenders. Against the 100,000 border troops Zhao Heng might mobilize, Northern Liang was at a disadvantage in both men and provisions. At court, Guchong was the first to request a full investigation of the missing grain. He shifted all blame onto an assistant minister of revenue who had supposedly taken his own life out of fear of punishment. He then proposed recalling Liang Zhou's defenders, abandoning the 3 small cities south of Eagle's Beak Gorge, and concentrating the main force around Yanjing. If Northern Liang voluntarily abandoned those cities, Great Sheng could seize 3 water sources and 2 trade routes without losing a single soldier. Once Zhao Heng established his position, the Guyu family's private army could rise within Yanjing, leaving Xiaoyan unable to defend both front and rear. Xiaoyan did not expose Guchong at court. He merely agreed to consider contracting the defensive line. Once court was dismissed, he took me directly into a secret chamber within the palace. The young Emperor Xiao Yu was waiting there. Though young, he sat with perfect posture. A map of all Northern Liang lay open on the table. When he saw me, he first addressed me solemnly as Imperial Aunt, then stole a glance at Xiaoyan. "Imperial Uncle says Imperial Aunt uncovered 12 traitors in the Regent's residence in a single day. Could I ask Imperial Aunt to investigate my instructors in the Imperial School as well?" Xiaoyan said coldly. "Did you finish yesterday's policy essay?" Xiao Yu immediately lowered his head. "Perhaps we should discuss the military situation first." I nearly laughed aloud. Guchong had controlled the court for years, but never dared depose the young emperor directly because Xiao Yu was the late emperor's sole blood heir, recognized by Northern Liang's imperial clan and veteran generals. Xiao Yan held military authority. Xiao Yu held legitimacy. With uncle and nephew supporting each other, Guchong could attack only the people around them. "We cannot withdraw from Liangzhou." I pointed at the map. "Zhao Heng dares send troops because he is certain we lack grain. Let him continue to believe it." I proposed secretly transporting a portion of the grain in my space to Liangzhou, only enough to sustain the defenders for 10 days. At the same time, the residents would borrow grain from the merchant guilds of Yanjing and Liangzhou, guaranteeing repayment with salt permits, reduced border trade taxes, and priority purchasing rights after the war. The Ministry of Revenue has no money, and the Treasury lacks grain. Why would merchants agree to lend it? Because Guchong only knows how to force them to donate, while I will give them an enforceable contract. If Northern Liang wins, They receive priority border trade rights for the next 3 years. If Northern Liang loses, the residents will compensate them with its estates and salt works. Xiao Yan is not asking merchants to wager on empty words. He is pledging his own property. After reading the contract, Han Boshuan, chairman of the Yanjing Merchants Guild, asked me, "Is your highness not afraid that if we lose, the regent's residence will be stripped bare? If Northern Liang falls, what use would those estates and salt works be to the residents?" He remained silent for a moment, then pressed his handprint onto the contract. Ons and the first house agreed. A second followed. Within 3 days, more than 200 grain wagons were traveling toward Liangzhou from every direction. To prevent Guchong from cutting the supply line, I did not send them all down the official road. I divided them into 7 routes and concealed them among merchant caravans, medicine convoys, and civilian carts carrying winter clothing. The grain from my space was packed into old sacks belonging to the residents. Publicly, we claimed Xiao Yan had secretly stored it years ago. I could remove at most 20 shy at a time. After doing so for several consecutive days, my face grew so pale that even Qingdai was afraid to ask questions. When Xiao Yan discovered it, he took the warehouse key straight out of my hand. "You will take out no more tonight. The front is still short 60 shi. The Han family's grain convoy will arrive tomorrow. What if it is intercepted? I will go meet it." He pushed a bowl of hot soup before me and watched until I finished every drop before he would leave. As he departed, he placed his black iron regent's token on the table. "If I do not return within 3 days, use this token to take His Majesty out through the northern gate. Pei Su will escort you to Liangzhou. What about you? If Guchong acts in Yanjing, someone must remain behind to hold him off." I tied the token back onto his waist. "I will not collect your corpse. We leave together, or we defend together." Xiao Yan lowered his eyes to my hand, then suddenly pulled me into his arms. It was neither a test nor the deliberate intimacy of our wedding night. He simply held me once, very tightly. "Jiang Nian," he said beside my ear, "do not let me grow accustomed to having someone wait for me, then come back alive." On the 4th day, Zhao Heng led his army across the boundary river between the 2 kingdoms. He had not obtained 100,000 troops. Zhou He held his position on the grounds that the order was suspicious, and other generals were unwilling to rush into war while Jiang Chongshan's fate remained unknown. In the end, Zhao Heng pieced together an army of 50,000, including 30,000 men of the Eastern Palace vanguard under his direct control. 50,000 was still nearly 3 times the size of Liangzhou's defending force. Before the lines, Zhao Heng issued a proclamation declaring that Xiao Yan had seized a princess of Great Sheng and imprisoned Jiang Nian, and that he had marched only to bring Princess Anning home. To lend credence to the claim, he brought more than a dozen Great Sheng civil officials to record his righteousness after the city fell. I stood atop Liangzhou's walls with only the copper-speaking trumpet routinely used by the defenders. "Zhao Heng," I let my voice carry down on the wind. "If you say you came to save me, first release the Jiang family from the imperial prison. If you say I caused this war, produce evidence that Northern Liang holds me captive." Silence fell below the walls for a moment. Zhao Heng raised his head and saw me, his expression instantly darkening. "Nian, I know Xiao Yan has coerced you. Open the city gates, and I will forgive everything that has happened. Then do you dare let both armies see the secret order to silence me in Black Sand Valley?" At Pei Su's command, copies of the order were tied to dozens of headless arrows and shot into the Great Sheng formation. Soldiers in the front ranks picked up the papers soon. Someone recognized the Eastern Palace's private seal. Zhao Heng immediately ordered the papers confiscated, but it was too late. Her lies are deceiving the army. He drew his sword and pointed it at the walls. "Once the city falls, kill every Northern Liang soldier and civilian except Jiang Nian." Those words shook the army's morale more powerfully than the 100 secret orders I had shot down. He had not come to rescue anyone. He had come to massacre a city. Great Sheng's vanguard began to advance. According to plan, Xiao Yan abandoned 2 outer encampments in succession, burning only the fodder they could not carry during the withdrawals. Seeing empty camps and thin cooking smoke, Zhao Heng concluded that Liangzhou lacked food. Ignoring his strategist's warnings, he ordered 30,000 vanguard troops to pursue through the night. When they entered Eagle's Beak Gorge, Xiaoyan appeared to have fewer than 8,000 troops remaining. Zhao Heng did not know that grain from the merchant guilds had already entered Liangzhou by a northern trail. Still less did he know that the two abandoned camps did not mark a route. They were meant to separate his vanguard from its supply wagons in the rear. At its narrowest point, Eagle's Beak Gorge permitted only 20 riders abreast. Xiaoyan had no gunpowder, nor did he need any. He had ordered workmen to loosen an old stone barrier on the slope and dam the upstream water for 2 days. After all 30,000 vanguard troops entered the gorge, Northern Liang's soldiers cut the ropes. Falling rocks sealed the road behind them, while released water destroyed the rear division's pontoon bridge. Xiaoyan led cavalry down from the heights on both flanks. He did not confront the numerically superior Great Sheng army head-on, attacking only command banners and grain wagons. Great Sheng's vanguard had been assembled in haste. It included Eastern Palace elites, local garrison troops, and Zhang family veterans mobilized by the Forged Order. The three contingents obeyed different commands. Ordinarily, the Crown Prince's banner could keep them in line. Once the main banner fell, however, the front ranks did not know the rear's orders, while the rear could not see what was happening inside the gorge. They quickly blocked one another in the narrow passage. Xiaoyan did not send boulders crashing into the pack soldiers. He used them to seal both ends of the wagon train. Any trapped soldier who laid down his weapon could withdraw along the northern trail. The force truly cut off was the Eastern Palace Guard Zhao Heng used to compel the others to fight. This plan was not indiscriminate mercy toward the enemy. Xiaoyan and I had agreed upon it before the battle. More than anything, Zhao Heng wanted Northern Liang to slaughter Great Sheng soldiers. The more men died, the deeper the hatred between the two kingdoms, and the easier it would be to excuse his unauthorized war as revenge. Instead, we left an escape route so those who returned could tell their comrades that the Crown Prince had deceived them into entering the gorge and ordered the rear ranks forward, even when he did not understand the situation. The wind changed in the afternoon and thick smoke rose through the gorge. It was not poisonous, but came from wet grass and wolf dung burned by Northern Liang soldiers. The smoke obscured all sight. Unable to see the front, the Eastern Palace's supervisory troops continued firing arrows into the jammed soldiers to drive them onward. Several Zhang veterans raised shields to protect the wounded and clashed with the supervisory troops on the spot. Xiaoyan seized the opportunity, charged down the western slope, and shot through the rope holding the Crown Prince's vanguard banner. The black and gold flag fell into the mud, and Great Sheng's front ranks lost all command. Those who lay down their weapons may leave through the northern mouth. Northern Liang's soldiers shouted in unison along the slopes. Those who resist will remain in the valley. At first, only a dozen men dropped their sabers. Then 100, then 500. More and more soldiers refused to die for a crown prince who used them as stepping stones. The Eastern Palace vanguard commander drew his sword and killed 2 retreating men, only to be dragged from his horse by his own deputy. When Zhao Heng heard the routed soldiers' reports outside the gorge, his first response was not to assist them. He ordered the southern exit sealed so the defeated troops could not throw his central army into disorder. Thousands of retreating men were trapped beside the river and watched Eastern Palace archers aim their arrows at them. Only when several veteran generals at the rear forcibly opened the formation were the men able to return to camp. Word of that order spread through Great Sheng's army faster than news of the defeat itself. I remained in Liangzhou responsible for the wounded and the supply route, but I did not sit inside the residence waiting for reports. During the battle, a Gu family agent planted in the Merchants' Guild tried to set fire to the grain wagons that had just entered the city. I had divided every grain convoy into small groups in advance and sent them to 7 civilian storehouses immediately upon arrival. The agent burned only an empty warehouse filled with wet sand. When the fire began, I led men to seal the surrounding streets. On the arsonist, we found banknotes issued by the Giyu family. "Bind him atop the city wall," I told the commander. "Let the whole city see who is burning the people's grain while an enemy army attacks." That same day, wealthy families in the city who had been waiting to see what happened opened 3 more private granaries. The war continued for 2 days. Zhao Heng never saw his vanguard capture Liangzhou. He saw only routed soldiers returning in groups. The 30,000 men had not been annihilated. More than 10,000 were killed, wounded, or captured. The rest lost their provisions and commanders and could only abandon their armor and retreat to the southern bank of the Boundary River. Xiao Yan returned to Liangzhou before sunset, his black armor covered in dried blood. An arrow had struck his shoulder, but fortunately it had missed the bone. I met him beneath the city gate. When he dismounted, his first words did not announce victory. He asked, "The granaries?" "All 7 remain, and you, I remain as well." It was as though he could finally relax. His body swayed. I steadied him and smelled the heavy reek of blood. "Xiao Yan, a superficial wound. You say that every time because every time I return alive." As physician Shu treated his arrow wound, Pei Su brought in a captive. The man was one of Zhao Heng's campaign advisors. To save his life, he surrendered an unsent secret letter and a blue jade token. One side of the token bore an orchid, and the other an extremely small character. Gu Xiaoyan took one look, and his expression darkened. "This is a blood jade token given only to Gu children at birth. The men's bear pine trees, the women's orchids." The captive knelt on the ground. Before every mobilization, the Crown Prince consulted Miss Lin. That Miss Lin holds half a military tally and can directly command Chancellor Gu's men. I remembered the name Han Yu had called before dying, and the flash of panic on Lin Wanru's face when she saw the Guzi family's copper box. Xiao Yan closed his hand around the jade token. Lin Wanru was not a pawn purchased by Guchong. She was Guchong's daughter. Lin Wanru came to Liangzhou on the 3rd day after Great Sheng's retreat. She had neither the bridal carriage nor Eastern Palace guards. She and an elderly maid arrived at the city gates in a battered carriage. When the defenders searched her, they found a sharpened silver hairpin in her coiffure and 3 travel permits under different identities hidden in the soles of her shoes. But no weapon or secret letter. She asked to see the consort. The defending commander reported that she also claimed to know where General Zhang was being held. Xiao Yan's arrow wound had not healed, yet he remained in the study handling military affairs. Only after I changed the dressing on his shoulder did I order Lin Wanru brought in. She had grown much thinner in the few days since I last saw her. Without cosmetics to soften her perpetually delicate face, her eyes and brows showed an almost cutting composure. For the first time, she fell to her knees the moment she entered. "Sister Zhang, I will tell you where the Zhang family is, and I will reveal every arrangement Guchong has made in northern Liang. I ask only that you and His Highness spare my life." Zhao Heng was willing to let you leave. His temperament changed after the defeat. He became convinced I had bewitched him into going to war and tried to kill me several times. She lifted her sleeve, revealing ligature marks on her arm. "If I remain beside him, I will only become his scapegoat." "So you came to me, the woman you have schemed against all this time. We are both women manipulated by men and our families." She looked up through her tears. "I know you hate me, sister, but Guchong sent me to Great Sheng as a child. I had no choice but to obey. Zhao Heng seemed to cherish me, but he treated me only as an ornament that displayed his devotion. You and I should never have been enemies." Once those words might truly have moved me, but she delivered them too smoothly. Every sentence cast her as a victim and perfectly appealed to the compassion most likely to arise in a woman betrayed by her betrothed. She did not even ask how Xiao Yan had recognized the Gu blood jade token before voluntarily admitting her identity. She had not come because she was desperate. She had come prepared. "Where is the Zhang family?" I asked. "Your father and 2 elder brothers were originally held in the imperial prison. After Zhao Heng obtained the general's seal, he secretly transferred them to the Yunzhou military camp. The Zhang women remain in the Ministry of Justice prison in the capital." Proof. Lin Wanru pulled a blood-stained strip of cloth from a hidden layer in her collar. It bore my father's handwriting and only one message: "Niana, do not return. Defend the city first." I recognized the characters, and I recognized the distinctive final stroke my father made when writing the character for child. The cloth was genuine. "How did you obtain it?" I was outside the tent when Zhao Heng tried to force General Zhang to surrender the true military tally. General Zhang entrusted the strip to a guard, and that guard owed my nanny his life. She also revealed 3G family contact points in Yanjing and named 2 officials. Peisu investigated through the night. At one location, he indeed found accounts documenting exchanges between Guchong and Zhao Heng. Her offer of allegiance carried such weight that even Peisu believed we could spare her life for the time being. Xiaoyan asked only me, "Do you believe her? Half the information about the Jiang family is real. Her surrender is false. How will you test her?" I placed a newly drawn map of the grain depots on the table. "Let her see this." The next day, I deliberately spoke in the side courtyard where Lin Wanru was staying, saying that the food in my space was nearly exhausted and that all remaining military grain had been stored in Changfeng Depot in the north of the city. While serving tea, Qingdai accidentally knocked the map over, allowing Lin Wanru to see Changfeng Depot's location and the hour of the night watch rotation. That night, she did nothing. On the second night, she remained quiet. It was not until dawn on the third day that a rough servant woman who carried out Lin Wanru's laundry was caught at the rear gate. A hollow bamboo hairpin was hidden in the woman's coiffure. The note inside contained only Changfeng Depot's location and no recipient's name. Following the contact signal, Peisu led men to a dye house in the west of the city and captured the last group of Gu family death-sworn agents in Liangzhou. At the same time, 2 arsonists appeared at Changfeng Depot. But Changfeng Depot contained not a single grain of rice, only empty vats filled with water and 300 defenders who had been waiting for a long time. When Lin Wanru was dragged before me, she did not cry. She looked at me for a long time, then suddenly laughed. "I never understood why Zhao Heng refused to make use of you. Now I see he truly is stupid beyond redemption. You have finally stopped pretending. Pretending to be weak was useful. Why would I stop?" She slowly straightened. "Men like watching women bow their heads for them and fight over their favor. I needed only to cough twice and shed a few tears, and Zhao Heng would believe he was the only person in the world who could protect me. He imagined himself deeply devoted. In truth, he merely enjoyed being worshipped." "You do not love him." "Love." It was as though she had heard a joke. I was only 9 when Guchong sent me to Great Sheng. The first thing my nanny taught me was how to attract the future heir's attention. I studied beside Zhao Heng, took an arrow for him, and molded myself into the woman he liked, all so that one day he would open northern Liang's gates for the Giyu family. The arrow you took for him was arranged as well, of course. She pointed to her left shoulder. The archer was a Gu family death-sworn agent. The arrowhead had been blunted in advance. At the correct distance, it could not damage muscle or bone. Zhao Heng was 15 that year. He saw a frail woman take an arrow for him and decided from that day onward that no one could love him more sincerely. She leaned back in the chair, speaking as calmly as though discussing another person's affairs. "Afterward, every time he quarreled with you, he came to me. I never urged him to treat you well, nor did I openly speak ill of you. I merely said that Sister Jiang was born into a military family and had a direct temperament, so perhaps you did not understand His Highness's difficulties. The more considerate I sounded, the more convinced he became that I alone understood him. You understand him very well." "It is not understanding. He is simply too easy to read. He wanted the Jiang family's military power, yet resented that you would not obey him in everything. He wanted the court officials to see him as a devoted heir, yet could not bear to make a real sacrifice for anyone. He needed a powerful wife to solve his problems and a weak woman who made him feel powerful. So you exploited his vanity while I cleaned up his disasters." Lin Wanru's smile cooled. "Jiang Yan, you and I are actually very much alike. Our fathers and imperial power decided both our marriages. Zhao Heng used both of us to satisfy his needs. The only difference is that you once believed in affection. I never did. We are not alike. How are we different? You were used, so you decided that using others was the only way to survive. But the guards you caused to die, the granaries you nearly burned, and I, whom you planned to leave bearing the blame in Black Sand Valley, none of us sent you into Great Sheng." I leaned down and looked at her. "Your past can explain why you became the person you are. It cannot absolve the person you are today." At last, a smile left her face. Jiang Nian, do not pretend your hands are so clean. Do you dare claim you have never used Xiao Yan? I have. When I proposed in Black Sand Valley, I needed his power to survive, and he needed my evidence to break the plot. But I did not deceive him about its being an exchange of interests, and I certainly did not arrange an arrow behind his back so he would remain grateful to me for the rest of his life. People may begin with mutual benefit. What matters is whether they treat each other as human beings. She remained silent for a long time and looked away from my face. In that moment, I knew she understood. She simply refused to admit it. The instant she acknowledged that people could make other choices, she could no longer blame every crime on Guchong and fate. Black Sand Valley was your arrangement as well. Yes, originally Xiao Yan would die at the welcoming camp, and the marriage princess would die in the fighting. Great Sheng would accuse Northern Liang of killing its princess, while the Giyu family would accuse Xiao Yan of driving the imperial guard to rebellion. War between the kingdoms would become inevitable. I never expected you to walk out of Black Sand Valley alive. There was no remorse in her eyes, only resentment at having failed. Since you never intended to remain loyal to Zhao Heng, why did you help him attack Liang Zhou? Because I needed him to remain crown prince. Guchong wanted to control Northern Liang. Zhao Heng wanted to annex it. Both believed I would be loyal to them. Once they had destroyed each other, the trade routes and secret networks of both kingdoms would be in my hands. She had not prepared an escape route, but a web large enough to let her vanish with an immense fortune. The accounts Peisu recovered from the dye house proved that vast sums of Gu family and Eastern Palace silver passed through Lin Wanru's hands each year on their way south. Long ago she had transformed the secret dealings of both sides into her personal property. I did not kill her. Lin Wanru alive was more useful than Lin Wanru dead. I divided her confession into 2 copies. One was sent to the young emperor in Yanjing. The other, together with the Dew Blood Jade token and the money transfer accounts, went to Zhao Heng. I could almost imagine how Zhao Heng would react when he saw them. He could accept having judged someone wrongly. What he could never accept was that the woman he had protected for years, even abandoning his betrothed for her, had never truly loved him. Sure enough, a report came from Great Sheng's secret scouts 5 days later in public. Zhao Heng smashed apart the courtyard where Lin Wanru had lived and burned every keepsake left by her mother to ash. Then he shifted all blame for the defeat onto the campaign generals and Gu family spies. Still, he refused to admit that he was the one who had made the wrong choices. An envoy sent by Zhao Heng reached Liang Zhou that same day. The envoy brought a wooden box. It held no diplomatic letter, only a black bracer soaked through with blood. I recognized it immediately. My father always wore it on campaign. A small piece of blue cloth my mother had sewn inside the leather before her death was now worn pale around the edges. The envoy unfolded Zhao Heng's handwritten message. 3 days from now, at the Yunzhou boundary river, Xiao Yan's head in exchange for the entire Jiang family. If Jiang Yan does not appear, one Jiang will be executed every hour. After reading the letter, Xiao Yan threw it into the brazier. He wants to use the Jiang family to force you to kill me. Number, I tightened my grip on the bracer. He knows I will not kill you. He wants to force us both to go. What Zhao Heng had prepared in Yunzhou was not an exchange. It was a net meant to swallow the Jiang family and Northern Liang's regent together. But he had forgotten one thing. My father had commanded soldiers for half his life on Yunzhou soil. Half the army had grown up hearing his orders. Yunzhou lay in Great Sheng's northwest, facing Northern Liangzhou across the boundary river. Zhao Heng chose White Stone Shoal in the center of the river as the exchange site. During the dry season, the river grew shallow and exposed broad stretches of white gravel. With no mountains or woods around it, an ambush appeared impossible. Yet Yunzhou's military camp lay only 3 li south of the shoal, while Northern Liangbao cavalry guarded the north. If either side brought more than 500 troops, it would be considered an act of war. Zhao Heng demanded that Xiao Yan bring only 10 men. He will not bring the entire Jiang family. I spread out the map of Yunzhou. My father and 2 elder brothers are in the military camp, while the women remain in the capital. Zhao Heng will first use my father to lure me out, then use my eldest sister-in-law and nephew to force father to surrender the military tally. Even if we rescue the person at Whitestone Shoal, he has another move prepared. Xiao Yan said, I will bring troops to the border openly and force him to release them. If you send troops, Zhao Heng can kill my father with a clear justification, then blame Northern Liang for starting the war. I cannot watch you go alone, nor do I intend to go alone. I asked him to summon Lin Wanru. Zhao Heng wanted Xiao Yan's head, while Gucheng wanted Lin Wanru silenced. Lin Wanru held lists of Gu private soldiers in several places and knew the Eastern Palace's command signals. She had no wish to work for us, but she had even less desire to fall back into Gucheng's hands. I placed a blank travel permit before her. Help me rescue them. When this is over, I will give you a chance to leave both kingdoms. She sneered. How can I trust you? You need not. I can hand you to Gucheng now, or send you back to Zhao Heng. If you believe either choice is better than my offer, decide for yourself. She remained silent for a long time. At last, she revealed the Eastern Palace Death-sworn agent's contact signal and drew the locations of Yunzhou Camp's hidden gate and pigeon loft. Zhao Heng did not know she had been captured. He had received only the accounts exposing the truth and believed Lin Wanru had fled with the money. We therefore had a shadow guard of similar build cover herself with a veiled hat, infiltrate Yunzhou under her identity, and transmit a false order to the Eastern Palace agent. Jiang Nian possesses a complete map of Northern Liang's grain depots. On the day of the exchange, she will give it to Zhou He in return for the Jiang army escorting her south. The message was half true and half false, which made it easiest to believe. Zhao Heng both distrusted the Jiang army and coveted Northern Liang's grain routes. He was certain to divert his elites to watch Zhou He. At the same time, I sent Zhou He another set of secret orders my father had established years ago. When the blue banner rises, recognize no Eastern Palace. Obey only the commander. The sky was overcast on the day of the exchange. My father was locked in a prison cart, and my two elder brothers were nowhere in sight. Much of his hair had turned white. His right hand appeared to have been tortured and hung uselessly at his side. Zhao Heng sat on horseback beside the prison cart with only 500 soldiers behind him, though banners crowded the distant encampment. As agreed, Xiao Yan and I brought only Pei Su, Qingdai, and 8 personal guards to the riverbank. When Zhao Heng saw Xiao Yan arrive alive, disappointment flashed through his eyes. Jiang Nian, I gave you a chance, and I gave you one. I looked at my father. Release him. Kill Xiao Yan first. He ordered men to drag my father from the prison cart and hold a blade to his neck. Father raised his head and saw Xiao Yan and me standing side by side across the river. There was no plea for rescue on his face, only anger. Jiang Nian. His voice was hoarse, but still as forceful as when he trained me on the drill ground. A child of the Jiang family may die in battle, but may not trade commoners and comrades for her life. If you bow to a creature like this for this old man's sake today, you are not worthy of the Jiang name. Zhao Heng kicked the back of his knee. Silence. Father fell onto the gravel, then forced himself upright again. My eyes burned, but I did not look away. Father, you once taught me what to do when an enemy forces me to choose between two things. Do you remember? He froze, then suddenly laughed. Overturn his table so he gets neither. Realizing something was wrong, Zhao Heng immediately waved a hand. Loose arrows. The archers hidden behind the reeds on the southern bank had only just risen when an urgent horn sounded behind them. In the direction of Yunzhou Camp, a blue general's banner rose. Zhou He led 3,000 Jiang veterans out of the camp gates. They did not attack Northern Liang, but charged directly at the Eastern Palace elites hidden on Zhao Heng's flank. In his eagerness to seize the supposed grain depot map, Zhao Heng had sent his most trusted 1,000 men to watch Zhou He the previous night, leaving the rear of his ambush exposed. The 500 soldiers on Whitestone Shoal began to stir uneasily. Zhao Heng shouted, Jiang Chongshan has colluded with the enemy, and the Jiang army has rebelled. Kill them all. Yet few moved at once. I had already made thousands of copies of the Black Sand Order, the forged military command, and the evidence of Zhao Heng's collusion with the Gu family, and sent them into Yunzhou Camp with merchants and travelers. The soldiers did not know the truth of court politics, but they knew Jiang Chongshan had guarded the northwest for 20 years. They also knew Zhao Heng had just lost more than 10,000 men at Liangzhou. Zhao Heng pressed his blade to father's neck. Take one more step, and I will kill him first. Father suddenly drove himself backward. The soldier holding the blade was unprepared and staggered under the impact. At that same instant, the prison cart's chain fell to the ground. The lock had already been replaced. Qingdai's elder brother had once served as a scout in the Jiang army. The previous night, he infiltrated the prison cart while delivering water, used miniature wire cutters from my space to cut the lock's core, then sealed it again with wax. Father had pretended to be weakened by torture throughout the journey, waiting for Zhao Heng to draw close. With his left hand, Father seized a long saber and cut through his shackles in one stroke. Zhao Heng drew his sword to thrust, but Xiao Yan's arrow arrived first. It pierced Zhao Heng's shoulder armor and drove him 2 steps backward. Pei Su led the personal guards charging into the shallows. Northern Liang's bow cavalry stopped strictly on the northern bank and did not cross the border. Zhou He's men attacked from the south. At last, some of the great Sheng soldiers on White Stone Shoal dropped their weapons. We do not seek to rebel against Great Sheng. We ask only that the Crown Prince release General Jiang and return to the capital for trial. When the first man knelt, a second and third followed. Clutching his shoulder, Zhao Heng's face twisted almost beyond recognition. You eat the Zhao family's grain and receive the Zhao family's military pay. Zhou He galloped forward with saber drawn. Our pay comes from the people, and our armor defends the realm. It does not exist so you can murder loyal ministers and steal women. The last dozens of death-sworn agents around Zhao Heng protected him as he broke south. Father tried to pursue, but I stopped him. His injuries were more serious than they appeared. 2 bones in his right hand had been crushed, and whip wounds covered his back. Where are my 2 elder brothers? I asked. Zhao Heng kept them in the capital to control the Jiang family's former troops. Father looked at Xiao Yan with a complicated expression. Did you truly marry Northern Liang's regent? There was an imperial decree, a marriage certificate, and we bowed to heaven and earth. Xiao Yan stepped forward and performed the formal bow of a junior. This son-in-law greets father-in-law. Father stared at him for a long while. I hear you have killed more people than can be counted. The rumors are somewhat exaggerated. I hear you forced Zhao Heng to drink at your wedding. That part is true. At last, Father nodded. Then you possess at least some discernment. Father was taken to a Northern Liang tent for treatment. When Physician Xu unwrapped his right hand, Qingdai turned away, unable to look. 2 finger bones were displaced. The web between thumb and forefinger had been abraded raw by clamps, and old and new whip wounds overlapped across his back. Zhao Heng had wanted to force him to surrender the true tiger tally, but did not dare kill him outright. He had ordered the interrogators to choose places where the torture would be most agonizing, but not fatal. Father bit down on a piece of wood while Physician Xu set the bones and did not cry out once. Afterward, drenched in cold sweat, his first question was how the surrendered soldiers from Yunzhou would be handled. Zhou He has gathered the army. The Eastern Palace soldiers who laid down their weapons have been registered and are being held temporarily in camp. There has been no indiscriminate killing, I said. They cannot be held for long, most merely followed orders. And their families remain in Great Sheng. Separate the Eastern Palace death-sworn agents who truly participated in the forged orders and abuses. Return the rest to their camps in batches. Standing by the tent entrance, Xiao Yan asked, if we release them, do you not fear they will fight for Zhao Heng again? Sparing them today is how we sever Zhao Heng's army. Father looked at him. They will return and tell everyone that the Jiang army did not defect, and Northern Liang did not slaughter captives. The next time Zhao Heng issues a military order, the men below will first ask whether it serves the realm or only him. Xiao Yan nodded. Father-in-law and my consort think alike. Her ability to command soldiers is inferior to her 2 elder brothers, but she has been accurate with accounts and people since childhood. Father, I reminded him, I am still here, I know. Had you not insisted on marrying Zhao Heng back then, you would not have reached this point. The betrothal was arranged by the late emperor and the current Sheng emperor. But did you not like him very much at the time? He left me speechless. Xiao Yan looked composed beside us, but there was clearly a hint in his eyes that he too awaited the answer. I was young and ignorant, I misjudged him. I said. Father snorted. Your judgment may not be much better now. We will need to observe for several years. Xiao Yan answered with unexpected solemnity, as you should. That night, the surrendered Great Sheng soldiers were divided into 3 groups. Eastern Palace Death sworn agents who had participated in the Black Sand assassination, forged orders, and imprisonment of the Jiang family were confined separately. Ordinary soldiers were given rations and released to the southern bank. Officers willing to testify about the forged commands were placed under Zhou He's protection. As the released soldiers crossed Whitestone Shoal, they saw Northern Liang's army remain north of the Boundary River. They also saw Jiang Chongshan still wearing his old Great Sheng general's robes and no Northern Liang armor. The treason rumor Zhao Heng most wanted to spread was pierced by thousands of eyes that had witnessed the truth. Zhou He asked Father to take temporary command of Yunzhou camp, but Father did not immediately reclaim his authority. The Sheng Emperor has not yet issued an edict. If I, as a prisoner, privately take command, how is that different from Zhao Heng forging military orders? He said. Stabilize each camp first and jointly petition the court to investigate. We cannot trample the rules ourselves simply because we oppose a man who refuses to obey them. Those words later became the most important foundation of the campaign to rescue the emperor. The Jiang army was not using its troops to save its master, nor relying on Northern Liang's power to counterattack. Even after Zhao Heng blocked every proper avenue of appeal, it still did everything possible to preserve Great Sheng's military law and court order. The battle at Whitestone Shoal did not become a war between the 2 kingdoms. As Deputy General of the Northern Defense Army, Zhou He assumed control of Yunzhou camp and publicly asked the Sheng Emperor to send an imperial commissioner to investigate the forged orders and the Crown Prince's unauthorized campaign. The Jiang family's veterans neither defected to Northern Liang nor declared independence with their army, making it far harder for Zhao Heng to accuse them of treason again. But as we counted the captives, Pei Su discovered Lin Wanru was missing. After helping us transmit the false message with the Eastern Palace Code, she took advantage of the change in guards, killed her elderly nanny, changed into the woman's clothing, and escaped through Liangzhou's side gate. She also took the last list of Gu family private soldiers and an Eastern Palace token that allowed entry to Great Sheng's capital. An urgent report arrived from the capital 2 days later. Zhao Heng had escaped back to the capital first. That night, he launched a palace coup, placed the Sheng Emperor under house arrest, and seized control of the 6 ministries. The Jiang women and my 2 elder brothers had been taken into the palace, and Lin Wanru, carrying evidence that Guchong had secretly colluded with 3 Great Sheng ministers, had entered the imperial palace as well. She had not gone to save Zhao Heng. She had gone to seize the imperial seal and the true border defense map. On the 3rd day of Zhao Heng's control of the capital, a secret emissary from the Sheng Emperor reached Yunzhou. The man was Feng An, an elderly eunuch serving beside the emperor. He had crawled out through a palace drainage passage with an arrow in his left leg, clutching a waterproof oilskin pouch to his chest. Inside was a secret edict handwritten by the Sheng Emperor and half a tiger tally capable of mobilizing the capital garrison. The Sheng Emperor had begun guarding against Zhao Heng long before that day. After the evidence from Black Sand Valley entered the capital, he secretly ordered an investigation of the Eastern Palace. But Zhao Heng launched his palace coup first, sealed the palace gates on the pretext that the emperor was gravely ill, and used forged imperial edicts to transfer imperial guard units he did not control. The Sheng Emperor had no time to reclaim the Crown Prince's seal, and could only send the secret rescue edict to Father. The edict ordered Jiang Chongshan to assume temporary command of the northwestern armies and enter the capital to suppress the rebellion. It specifically permitted him to ally with Northern Liang's Regent, but forbade the main Northern Liang army from crossing the boundary markers of the capital region. This restriction did not reflect distrust of Xiaoyan. It preserved Great Sheng's final measure of dignity. After reading the edict, Xiaoyan handed the military tally to Father. Northern Liang's army will only block Zhao Heng's escape to the north. It will not enter the capital. Great Sheng's disorder will be settled by Great Sheng's army. Father accepted the tally and for the first time truly examined him as a father-in-law. If you march south amid the chaos, Great Sheng might not be able to stop you now. If I want cities, I will take them on the battlefield. I will not tread on the corpses of Zhang Nian's family. Father asked no more. He merely clasped his hands and bowed. We divided into 3 groups. Zhou he would escort Father and Yunzhou's defenders to the capital to rescue the emperor. Xiao Yan would station northern Liang cavalry at the northern passes to prevent Guchong's private soldiers from joining Zhao Heng. I would enter Great Sheng with Father, accompanied only by Qing Dai, Pei Su, and 20 guards. Xiao Yan objected. The person Zhao Heng most wants dead is not the Sheng Emperor but you. That is why I must go. The Black Sand Order, the Gu accounts, and Lin Wenru's confession are all in my hands. Father can use the military tally to suppress the rebellion. But he cannot prove in my place how Zhao Heng colluded with the enemy. The evidence can be entrusted to someone else. Some accounts must be settled in person. He remained silent for a long time. In the end, he placed his close-fitting soft armor on me and strapped a short dagger to the outside of my calf. 3 days, he said. Whether the capital is pacified or not, I will come for you after 3 days. The Sheng Emperor forbade northern Liang's army from crossing the border. I will go alone and be surrounded and killed as an assassin by Great Sheng's imperial guard. Then I must trouble my consort to act swiftly and deny me the chance to storm the palace. I rose on tiptoe and kissed him. It was the first time I kissed him of my own accord. There were no red candles, no bargain, and no audience. Xiao Yan's body stiffened for an instant. Then he clasped the back of my neck and deepened the kiss. When we parted, he rested his forehead against mine, his breathing slightly uneven. Zhang Nian, come back. I will. The capital was not united behind Zhao Heng. He could seal the palace because he controlled the Eastern Palace Guards and part of the capital's Imperial Guard, but he could not control every official of the 6 ministries, much less the 12 camps outside the city. The moment the Sheng Emperor's secret edict appeared, generals who had been watching and waiting responded one after another. Father did not rush to attack the city. He first severed the Eastern Palace Guard's pay and provisions, then sent evidence of Zhao Heng's collusion with the Gu family and unauthorized war into the capital. On the second night of the siege, officials from the Ministries of Justice and War opened the Western Gate. Father led his army straight toward the Imperial Palace. I infiltrated the inner city through the drainage passage Fengen had used to escape. The storage space could neither hold people nor let me teleport, but it could provide lightweight ropes, lighting tools, and lock-breaking equipment. We avoided the fighting at the main gates and entered the Imperial Garden through an abandoned cold palace. At that moment, Zhao Heng was forcing the Sheng Emperor to affix the seal in the Hall of Diligent Governance. The Sheng Emperor was confined to the Dragon Throne, his complexion grey. The Jiang women and my 2 elder brothers knelt along one side of the hall with blades at their necks. Lin Wenru stood beside the imperial desk, holding an abdication edict in her hands. Father Emperor, as soon as you affix the imperial seal, this son will have the imperial physicians treat you, Zhao Heng said. Once the rebels outside see the edict, they will naturally withdraw. The Sheng Emperor sneered. If I pass the throne to you, Great Sheng will truly perish. Zhao Heng's expression darkened. He snatched up the imperial seal and prepared to stamp it by force, but Lin Wenru reached out to stop him. Your Highness, give the seal to me, you. The palace is in chaos. This consort will keep it safe for you. When the edict is finished, this consort will stamp it personally. Zhao Heng looked at her, hatred mingling with lingering reluctance in his eyes. Wenru, I will ask you one last time. Did Zhang Nian forge those accounts? Yes, she did not hesitate. I never betrayed your Highness. Zhang Nian resented that your Highness loved me and joined forces with Xiao Yan to frame us. Zhao Heng had already read her confession and money transfer accounts, yet he remained willing to believe this clumsiest of lies, not because his love ran deep, but because accepting the truth meant admitting that he had abandoned Zhang Nian, killed his soldiers, and destroyed his position as heir for a fraud. Lin Wenru accepted the imperial seal, then abruptly pulled the hairpin from her head and stabbed it through the back of Zhao Heng's hand. Zhao Heng cried out and released her. She seized the seal and rushed toward the side door, but no Gu death-sworn agents waited outside to receive her. Only Pei Su and I stood there. Miss Lin, we meet again. She stopped abruptly and tried to turn back. Pei Su chopped through the side door's bar with one stroke and blocked her escape. Clutching his bleeding hand, Zhao Heng followed her out. When he saw me, his entire face changed. "Jiang Nian, has your highness not been searching for me all this time?" I entered the hall of diligent governance and first looked at my mother and sisters-in-law. Though frightened, they were not gravely injured. My two elder brothers remained conscious as well. Zhao Heng suddenly laughed. "You came back after all. You claimed all affection between us was severed, yet one edict from Father Emperor and one crisis in the Jiang family were enough to bring you back to Great Sheng. I returned to my own home, not to your eastern palace. What difference is there? Once I ascend the throne, your father will remain a Great Sheng subject, and you will still have to bow your head to me. Unfortunately, you will never ascend the throne." War drums suddenly sounded beyond the palace gates. Father's rescue army had entered the inner city. Deprived of pay and reinforcements, the Eastern Palace guards began surrendering in groups. I placed the evidence I had already organized in the hall. The Eastern Palace's secret order to silence me, the forged mobilization documents, the Giyu money transfer accounts, Zhao Heng's order for his unauthorized campaign, and testimony from captured soldiers. Each item was supported by witnesses, physical evidence, and money trails. This was not a single letter whose authenticity could be disputed. After reading the first volume, the Sheng Emperor hurled it into Zhao Heng's face in rage. "Unfilial wretch, the Jiang family has guarded the border for generations, yet you stole the general's seal and forged military orders. Were you also behind the assassination of Northern Liang's regent in Black Sand Valley?" Zhao Heng fell to his knees. This son sought to expand Great Sheng's territory. Once Xiao Yan died, Northern Liang would be ours for the taking. Jiang Nian is a woman of Great Sheng, yet she married a powerful minister of an enemy kingdom. She is the traitor. "You lost 30,000 soldiers and call that expanding the realm?" I asked. He snapped his gaze toward me. "If you had not helped Xiao Yan transport grain, his city would already have fallen. Nianya and I merely made the mistake any man might make. Wanru was frail, so naturally I cared for her a little more. Why did you have to drive me to ruin?" Even now, he described silencing witnesses, colluding with the enemy, forging orders, and starting a war as merely caring a little more for another woman. "Zhao Heng, do not insult every man beneath heaven," I said. "Some may be partial, but they would not turn their betrothed into a scapegoat for an assassination. Some may be ambitious, but they would not destroy loyal ministers for the throne. You did not lose because you loved Lin Wanru. You lost because you were selfish and stupid and never once willing to admit you were wrong. You have lost everything today, not because I took revenge. You dug your own grave with every step you took." Lin Wanru suddenly burst into laughter. She placed the imperial seal on the floor and kicked it toward the Sheng Emperor. "Jiang Nian is right. Zhao Heng, do you know why I chose you? Not because you were clever, but because you were the easiest to control. If I coughed, you reprimanded others for me. If I wept, you imagined yourself a hero rescuing a helpless woman. You never loved me. You loved the reflection of yourself that I gazed up at." The last trace of color drained from Zhao Heng's face. "Silence, do you want to know who proposed the plan in Black Sand Valley?" "I did. I was also the one who told Commander Chen to persuade you to abandon Jiang Nian and silence her. But you gave the final order and you stamped the seal. Whatever I told you to do, you did." Roaring, Zhao Heng lunged at her, but Pei Su kicked him to the ground. Imperial guards flooded in from outside and disarmed the Eastern Palace guards. The Sheng Emperor did not execute Zhao Heng on the spot. He stripped him of the position of Crown Prince and turned him over to the court of the Imperial clan and the 3 judicial officers for joint trial. The Black Sand assassination, forged military orders, unauthorized mobilization of the border army, and palace coup. Anyone charged was enough to ensure he would never rise again. Lin Wanru tried to exchange the list of Gu private soldiers for a pardon. I produced the copy recovered from the Langzhou Dai house. You believed the version you carried away was the only one. Pei Su had already finished copying it before you escaped. At last, her expression changed. All her life, she had treated others, trust as weakness and transformed every relationship into a bargaining chip. In the end, no one was willing to speak for her, and not one of those chips truly belonged to her. On the night the capital was pacified, I stood atop the palace gate and saw a line of torches appear on the northern road. Xiao Yan had not brought his army across the border. With only one horse and 2 personal guards, he had truly come to take me home. I ran down from the gate. He swung out of the saddle and pulled me into his arms. The exhaustion I had held at bay for days suddenly dissolved. Only then did I realize I had been waiting for this embrace all along. "You were 2 hours late," he said. "The palace is enormous and there were too many accounts to settle. Are you hurt? Number, then let us go home." But before we could leave the capital, an urgent Northern Liang report reached the palace gates. While Xiao Yan remained at the border, Guchong had launched a palace coup, sealed Yanjing, and placed the young emperor under house arrest. Gu Death's sworn agents had also seized from physician Shu the formula for the antidote to Xiao Yan's old poison. Xiao Yan had travelled without rest, his shoulder wound still unhealed. At that very moment the old poison flared. He coughed up a mouthful of black blood before me, yet still reached out to cover my eyes. "Do not look." When Xiao Yan woke, we were already in a carriage returning to Northern Liang. Physician Shu had told me the poison in his body was called frostbone. 7 years earlier, the Gu family had bribed an army physician to administer it. The poison did not kill immediately, but flared repeatedly with old wounds, cold, and exhaustion. Over the years, the physicians had found only ways to suppress it. The true antidote formula remained with the physician responsible, and eventually fell into Guchong's hands. By seizing the formula now, Guchong did not merely seek Xiao Yan's death. He wanted everyone to know that the regent's life was in his hands. Return to Great Sheng. Leaning against the carriage wall, Xiao Yan spoke weakly. "Guchong controls Yanjing. If you go back now, you will be throwing your life away. The young emperor is still in the palace. Pei Su will save him. Pei Su has 2,000 men. Guchong has the Imperial Guard, his private army, and Yanjing's city defenses. I will not die. I have believed you too many times when you said a wound was superficial. I brought the medicine to his lips. When he refused to open his mouth, I pinched his jaw and forced it down his throat. The mighty regent of Northern Liang choked and coughed, his expression sour, but he lacked the strength to do anything about me, Zhang Nian. Save your strength. You can lecture me when you recover. Father had wanted to accompany us with soldiers, but I refused. Great Sheng had only just survived a palace coup. Both the border and the capital needed him. Xiao Yan had obeyed the Sheng Emperor's secret edict and not crossed the border amid the chaos. Great Sheng likewise could not march an army into Yanjing under the pretext of rescuing the emperor's son-in-law. In the end, the Sheng Emperor sent 300 physicians and craftsmen with us, publicly to aid Northern Liang's people after the rebellion. It was both repayment and the first genuine cooperation between the two kingdoms without mutual suspicion. We reached Liangzhou on the 5th day. Guchong controlled Yanjing's 9 gates but had not immediately pursued us, because he had encountered a problem even more difficult than Xiao Yan. Yanjing had not run out of food. According to his original plan, once he sealed the gates and seized the government granaries, the common people and officials would panic within 3 days. He could then use food to force the court to depose Xiao Yan and appoint him Duke Regent, almost without spilling blood. But after investigating the regent's residence, I had long since replaced centralized purchasing through government granaries with 7 trade routes and 16 civilian depots. Han Boshuan and the other merchants held contracts from the residence and knew those agreements would remain valid after Gusheng fell. Instead of siding with the Gushu family, they secretly supplied the districts under Pei Su's control. Gu Shukong controlled the government granaries. He did not control the entire city's food. It was exactly what I had once told Xiao Yan in Liangzhou. What truly saves a city is never one warehouse of grain, but rules that keep grain flowing into it. Pei Su had not rashly attacked the palace either. He secured 3 of the city's water sources and the eastern civilian depots, then announced in the name of the court of the imperial clan that the young emperor had never issued an edict dismissing the regent. So Guchong's sealing of the city constituted rebellion. The Gu family might control the palace gates, but it could not make the imperial clan and veteran generals recognize its legitimacy. By the time we reached the outskirts of Yonjing, 2 Imperial Guard units had already defected. At last, Guchong dragged Xiao Yu onto the city wall. The 12-year-old boy wore his dragon robes. His hands were bound, and a blade rested behind him. Guchong stood at his side and ordered men to shout down from the walls. Xiao Yan murdered the late emperor and colluded with Great Sheng. His Majesty has issued an edict stripping him of the regency. Madame Jiang has deceived the people and thrown both kingdoms into chaos. Whoever presents their heads will be granted a marquisate and gold. No one below the walls responded. Xiao Yan forced himself to remain on horseback, his face cold and pale. I advanced beside him and produced the marriage edict handwritten by the young emperor and the list of GU private soldiers, Guchong. I called up, "If you truly possess His Majesty's edict, then produce a document bearing the imperial seal and filed with the Secretariat. Using a child's life to bolster your courage only lets the entire city see what kind of creature you are." Guchong laughed. "Your Highness should worry about your husband first. Once Frostbone flares, he cannot live beyond 7 days without the antidote. If you surrender Liang Zhou's military authority and the Giyu account books now, this old man can let him die comfortably." "Who said you alone possessed the antidote?" For the first time, his composure cracked. Physician Xu did not have the complete formula, but he remembered Xiao Yan's reactions to years of medication. Among the Great Sheng physicians traveling with us was a man who had seen a similar poisoning in the western regions. The modern equipment in my space could not directly analyze a complex ancient poison. But sterile instruments, infusion supplies, and basic antimicrobial medicine could reduce the danger while the physicians tested remedies and removed necrotic tissue. More importantly, when Guchong stole the formula, he overlooked 1 page of the medicinal inventory. I had copied that page long ago while investigating the residence's apothecaries. From the special ingredients that remained unchanged for 7 years, Physician Xu had already deduced the antidote's principal components. What Guchong held was not the only path to survival. He merely believed it was impossible. He stared at Xiao Yan. "If you have the antidote, why do you still look like that?" "Because I was waiting for you to bring everyone into the open." Xiao Yan straightened in the saddle and drew his sword. 3 cannon blasts suddenly sounded in the distance. They did not come from modern explosives, but from fire cannons used for signaling in northern Liang's army. Black wolf banners rose simultaneously above the eastern and southern gates inside the city. The signal Pei Su had arranged to force Xiao Yan to submit beneath the walls. Guchong had moved the private soldiers guarding the palace and his most loyal imperial guards to the western gate. Pei Su seized the opportunity to retake the eastern defenses. Han Boshuan organized merchants and commoners to block the Gu private army's retreat. Meanwhile, an elderly imperial prince entered the imperial guard camp carrying the late emperor's testament, proving that the physician planted by the Gyui family had been the true culprit in the late emperor's murder 7 years before. Guchong meant to use Xiao Yu as a hostage, but underestimated the child Xiao Yan had personally raised. The instant chaos erupted on the wall. Xiao Yu threw himself backward, knocking down the death-sworn agent holding the blade, then vaulted a low barrier and hid behind the battlements. Shadow guards who had long been concealed on the outside of the wall threw up a rope and caught him from the side. Pei Su opened the western gate. Northern Liang's cavalry did not massacre the city. They attacked only the Gu private army. Once Guchong lost both the young emperor and the gate, the power he had spent 20 years cultivating began to collapse. Many officials who had once attached themselves to the Gua family surrendered on the spot, hoping to exchange testimony for their lives. Even when Guchong was dragged down from the wall, he refused to bow his head. "Xiao Yan, you rely only on one woman's demonic arts. Without her, you should have died at the border 7 years ago." Xiao Yan did not grow angry. "Without her, I might die. But without you, Northern Liang would never have suffered that ambush 7 years ago, nor this rebellion today. I will not kill you before the city gates. You will face joint trial by the 3 judicial officers, so every person who died because of the Jiyu family will know the truth." Lin Wanru was extradited from Great Sheng to stand trial in northern Liang as well. When father and daughter met in prison, they did not cling to each other and weep. Guchong cursed her as selfish and foolish for destroying the plans he had built over many years. Lin Wanru demanded to know why he had sent his 9-year-old daughter into a foreign kingdom, and taught her to become a monster capable only of using others. Each claimed to have been ruined by the other, yet neither truly regretted harming innocent people. In the end, the 3 judicial officers convicted Guchong of treason, according to law. Lin Wanru received no pardon for her part in the assassination, arson, and collusion with the enemy after joint trial by Great Sheng's court of the imperial clan. Zhao Heng was reduced to a commoner and imprisoned for life at the imperial mausoleum. He had valued status and power above all else. For the rest of his days, he could only guard the stone tablets of past emperors and watch others write down his crimes. After the rebellion, Xiao Yan's treatment did not proceed smoothly. Physician Xu and the Great Sheng physicians first suppressed the poison, then cleaned the repeatedly inflamed old wound in his shoulder. His high fever would not break on the first night, and on the second day he briefly lost consciousness. My space held fever reducers, fluids, and antimicrobial supplies, but no miraculous medicine capable of erasing frostbone with a single dose. I stayed beside his bed for 3 days for the first time. The warehouse felt utterly powerless. At dawn on the 4th day, Xiao Yan finally opened his eyes. When he saw me, his first words were, "Why have you been crying?" "I have not." "Your eyes are swollen." "I have not slept for 3 days." "Then come up here and sleep." He shifted deeper into the bed, tugged his wound and frowned in pain. I meant to scold him, but he took my hand. "Jiang Nian, yes, that day in Black Sand Valley. You said you wanted to marry me to make Zhao Heng regret his choices. And now," I lowered my eyes to our joined hands, "it has nothing to do with him. I simply want to marry you." Xiao Yan smiled. His smiles were usually faint, but this time he looked like an ordinary man who had finally received the answer he sought. During the 2 months he spent recovering, Yanjing did not immediately return to peace merely because the Zhu family had fallen. Guchong had controlled the court for years. His removal left vacancies large and small throughout the Ministry of Revenue, Imperial Guard, grain transport offices, and local administrations. If everyone who had ever dealt with the Gu family were punished, half of Northern Liang's government would cease functioning. If all were pardoned without consequence, it would betray those whose provisions had been stolen and whose lives the private soldiers had taken. After discussing the matter with Xiao Yu, I divided those implicated into 3 categories. Those who directly participated in the rebellion, assassinations, and arson would be tried by the 3 judicial officers. Those who accepted GU silver but did not join the rebellion were ordered to return the money within a fixed period and would be demoted or dismissed according to the amount. Minor clerks who had merely processed documents at a superior's orders and voluntarily provided evidence would remain under observation in their posts. The method was not emotionally satisfying, but it prevented us from creating another group of unjust cases in the effort to destroy the Ji family. Not all the silver recovered by the Regent's residence entered its private treasury. One portion paid overdue military wages, another rebuilt Liangzhou's sick wards, and the rest formed a relief fund distributed by register to the families of soldiers killed or disabled at Eagle's Beak Gorge. Every payment was posted outside the government office. Names, sums, and collection dates were open for anyone to verify. At first, some mocked a regent's consort for counting petty accounts like a merchant. Once the first relief payments truly reached widowed mothers and young children, those voices faded. Han Bochuan and the other merchants received priority border trade rights according to their contracts, but not an unconditional monopoly. The guild had to guarantee stable prices in disaster years, transport supplies for the border army, and maintain the roads. If it hoarded goods during war to drive up prices, its salt permits would be revoked immediately. Merchants could profit, while the people did not bear every risk. Nearly 20% of the supplies in my space had been consumed. I reclassified what remained. Ordinary grain and clothing would be used as little as possible while Northern Liang developed local production. Disinfectants and emergency medical instruments that could not be copied would be reserved for major disasters. A small number of seeds went to agricultural officials for trial planting, but I promised no miraculous harvest. We would first see whether they suited the local soil and water. Reclining on the couch, Xiao Yan watched me write the inventory. Even your immortal warehouse requires careful accounting. The more miraculous something appears, the less it can endure waste. Then which tier am I on the inventory? What? When my old poison flared, my consort was willing to use even her most precious medicine. It appears I qualify at least as a major disaster. I threw my brush at him. He caught it easily. If you refuse to drink your medicine on time again, you will be a man-made disaster. Xiao Yu happened to enter carrying memorials. Hearing the final words, he nodded emphatically. Imperial aunt is right. Imperial uncle poured his medicine into a flower pot yesterday, and the orchid in the imperial garden is wilted today. Xiao Yan looked expressionlessly at his nephew. One additional policy essay today. Xiao Yu immediately dropped the memorials, turned, and fled. Even as he left the room, he shouted, "Imperial aunt, remember to make imperial uncle drink his medicine." For once, the study held the genuine liveliness of a family. No one discussed heirs, military power, or political marriages. There was only a patient who hated bitter medicine, a young emperor who fled after tattling, and a regent's consort forced to pick up the medicine bowl and chase them. Several months later, Great Sheng and Northern Liang signed a new alliance. It abolished political marriages involving women and instead opened 3 border trade ports, exchanged prisoners of war, and established joint patrols against border bandits. The Jiang family was exonerated. Father resumed military command, but voluntarily returned the Tiger Tally once the border stabilized and retained only an honorary post training new troops. Xiao Yu remained emperor of Northern Liang. He did not give the throne to Xiao Yan, and Xiao Yan had never considered usurping his nephew's realm. After the court purged the Jiyu faction, Xiao Yu gradually assumed personal rule. The first edict he decided entirely by himself elevated Xiao Yan to regent prince of the first rank, and granted him a golden token of immunity from execution. The second arranged a true wedding ceremony for us. Our marriage in the border city had been too hurried and entangled with bargaining and revenge. This time, Xiao Yan personally traveled to Great Sheng's Jiang residence to present the betrothal gifts. The gifts did not stretch extravagantly for 10 li, but they included the contracts for the newly opened trade routes, an umbrella of the myriad people sent by Liangzhou's commoners, a letter of thanks jointly signed by the soldiers from the wounded barracks, and an old wooden box that had been repaired. Inside the box was the crown prince's jade pendant I had once crushed. The broken jade had been ground to powder and fired again as an unassuming white paperweight. Xiao Yan had carved a line on its base. He who abandoned me ground jade to dust. He who knows me offers mountains and rivers as my bride price. Father turned the paperweight over in his hands for a long time, then told Xiao Yan, "Nian'er has a difficult temper and is stubborn in everything she does. If you dare mistreat her, Northern Liang may be distant, but this old man will come to your door with a saber." Xiao Yan bowed solemnly. "Rest assured, father-in-law. I will be grateful if she does not mistreat this son-in-law." The entire hall laughed, only I kicked him. On our wedding day, I again wore red, but I was no longer Princess Anning sent to a foreign kingdom as a hostage. Father and my brothers personally escorted me from the house, and not one chest of the dowry my mother left behind was missing. As Qingdai helped me into the bridal sedan, she asked whether I had ever imagined, on that day in Black Sand Valley, that I would arrive here. I lifted the sedan curtain and saw Xiao Yan waiting on horseback at the far end of the avenue. Number. Then why did my lady dare propose to a strange man? I considered the question. When Zhao Heng abandoned me, he saw only that I had no bridal carriage, no guard, and no path of retreat. Xiao Yan saw me battered and disheveled, but first asked what I held in my hands. One wanted me to accept my fate. The other knew I could stand beside him. The bridal sedan stopped before Xiao Yan. Instead of waiting inside the residence according to protocol, he personally dismounted, lifted the curtain, and extended his hand to me, my consort. "What bargain does your highness wish to make with me this time?" "It is not a bargain." He took my hand and led me into the lights of the entire city. "It is the rest of our lives, latter." Many who spoke of the political marriage that had nearly destroyed 2 kingdoms said Great Sheng's crown prince had abandoned one betrothed in Black Sand Valley, and thereby created a destined union for Northern Liang's regent. But they were wrong. What Zhao Heng abandoned that day was never merely a betrothed. He had thrown into the enemy camp with his own hands the person who could have safeguarded half his realm. As for me, no one picked me up, and I did not rely on anyone else to begin anew. I simply rose from the yellow sand and chose another road for myself. At the end of that road stood someone who held my hand, gazing beside me at mountains and rivers and the lights of 10,000 homes. To all rational thinkers, the accounts of this reverse acquisition political marriage have now been fully settled. Reviewing the entire game, the heroine offered an exceptionally sophisticated model for a counterstrike. She did not weep in Black Sand Valley, beg Zhao Heng to turn back, or reveal every trump card to Xiao Yan. She simply seized 3 crucial points with precision. First, she used the Eastern Palace order hidden in the bridal carriage to prove that she had value. Second, she used the oil wagons and false grain carts to prove that she could see through conspiracies. Third, with a posture of partnership rather than dependence, she made it impossible for Xiao Yan to treat her as an ordinary hostage. From beginning to end, she never said, "Save me." She said only, "Marry me, and you can live." Zhao Heng never understood why he lost. He believed it was the military defeat, Lin Wanru's betrayal, or Jiang Nian's refusal to forgive him. In truth, he lost because of the fatal flaw he exposed from the moment he entered Black Sand Valley. He wanted the Jiang family's military power, yet despised Jiang Nian for refusing to obey his every command. He needed a powerful wife to solve his problems, yet also needed a weak woman who made him feel powerful. He believed every woman beneath heaven should revolve around him, never realizing that true players were never playing on his board. And Xiao Yan won not because he was an invincible regent. Jiang Nian helped suppress his poison, isolate his military camp, uproot the traitors in his residence, obtain military grain through merchant contracts, and pull the arrow from his shoulder. His true core competency was only this. From the first day, he recognized her value and was willing to place in her hands the residence seals, the treasury keys, and the rule that she could not go off alone to die without his permission. That is not doting on a wife. It is recognizing talent. Remember the central logic. Zhao Heng used a pearl as a stepping stone. Xiao Yan recognized the stepping stone as a pearl. It was not that the latter loved more deeply. His calculation of value was 10,000 times more precise. A woman who can uncover traitors, secure grain routes, and move the trade networks of 2 kingdoms is worth exchanging an entire realm to obtain. If you also appreciate this cool-headed narrative that treats political marriage as an acquisition, a proposal as a pitch, and settles every enemy into silver, please like, comment, and subscribe to signal your system-level agreement. I am Maggie Liu. Keep your strategic mind clear, and I will see you at the next game.